Board for November 2nd, 2021. It's 6:30. We're calling this meeting to order. We have with us board members, alternate Steve Hadfield, and for the moment, Steve, it looks as though you're going to be voting, at least for the time being. Board member Peter Coffin, board member and Vice Chair Lynn Merrill, Board of Selectmen Rep Richard Wilson, Glenn Koppelman here to my right, Ellen Faulkner, our administrative assistant and alternate as well, and it looks as though you're on as well for the time being as a voting person. Board member Peter Bakey is with us. And we have somebody else coming in. And it's Robin. Step down. You're stepping down? So Robin Duguay is joining us. You love making the grand entrance. It's very spectacular. Okay, you should all have a bunch of stuff in front of you. We have a lot of miscellaneous business tonight, most of which relates to potential zoning ordinances, that changes to zoning that we might want to be putting forward, and stuff we've been talking about. And so that's what a lot of this is in front of you. We also have a folder of correspondence with a bunch of things. But and that's the first thing that's listed on the agenda, but we do have a guest with us. Tammy Bakey. Tammy, if you'd come up to the front table there. We're gonna take it out of order and do you now so that you can be on your way.
Appreciate that. Then you're gonna go home.
So just introduce yourself and.
My name is Tammy Bakey. I'm the town clerk tax collector. There's more going around that side. At a recent select board meeting, the selectmen asked me to talk to you about changing the way that zoning ordinances or zoning articles appear on the ballot. That tells you the RSA that says that we can do it. Basically, instead of putting the whole ordinance or any changes to an ordinance on the ballot, you would do a synopsis, neutral in language, to say what the ordinance is asking. That the whole ordinance would have to be posted online, it have to be posted at the polling place, and available, and that's it.
Okay. Probably should give the board a second just to absorb what you just handed out. And we can entertain discussion whenever folks are ready. Well, let me ask, I'm assuming the reason for doing this is to cut down on volume?
Volume and cost.
Well, that relates to cost.
The 2 years ago when we had, there was only a few articles, but it cost us over $4,000, where last year it was like $1,600 because there was no zoning article. So it's printing and programming. They're still gonna have to program it, but it's just a cost savings.
It also is from somebody who sits at the voting machine.
Right.
The more entries, the more problems.
Right.
Yeah.
The more that has to be folded, the more that has to be counted, the more that has to be tested. You wouldn't believe the amount of work that we put into an election before it even happens. The more that has to be mailed, the postage, all that. So it's just trying to condense it.
And frequently what happens is that we do a zoning ordinance change, and it may not be clear to someone who doesn't know the old zoning ordinance what the change was. They see the proposal, and it could be 3 pages. A, they're not going to take the time to read it if they're in the polling place because they didn't read it before. And B, they'd like to have someone say, well, what's the effect of this? So,
Right. We
I
all
think
heard
it's a
about the rooster fiasco.
Oh, right.
You know,
It's
there
just
was
going to keep you
maybe,
from having chickens, yeah.
right, if there was maybe just a blurb that said this would make it so that roosters were legal in this zone, it might have been more clear to the average voter what it really meant. So.
Yeah,
even by printing the full article, we still have the option of putting an explanatory note, do we not? And I thought
And
we
you're
had,
gonna be making it worse.
and I thought we had done that.
I think,
I thought they got a decision that if we put the full article in there, we could not narrate.
yeah, it's, I
But
remember
without
seeing-
the full article, we can't narrate. But our moderator is here.
Yeah. I was gonna say, change your hat.
That's fine, come down here.
Okay.
I understand what Jamie's saying, and it is an awful lot of work, and they really put so much work into the election. I don't think anyone understands how much work they actually do. On the other hand, I think this is going to cause more people, the town's used to seeing it on the ballot. And I think it's going to cause more people to come out of the ballot box asking questions. I think you're gonna get more people saying no to planning board articles because they can't see what it is. We're assuming that because the Board of Selectmen put it out on the website on what the articles are, et cetera, that everyone's gonna be more educated than they normally are. And I think a lot of people do look at the articles when they're in the booth, and I think that this is going to, I wouldn't vote yes on an article that I couldn't see what it was as I voted on it. That's just
But
me.
that's not, you're missing the point.
I'm
It's
really
saying,
not.
it's,
No, I know what you're saying,
It's
it's gonna
saying-
be an explanation.
it's gonna be a synopsis of what that change is.
Mm-hmm.
It's not gonna be, oh, vote yes on Article 3 and no explanation of what Article 3 is. It's gonna be, it's up to you people to make that explanation.
Yeah, and I still think that without seeing the actual wording, I don't think it's up to, it's an election. And I'm just a person who thinks that it's important that the voters are the ones who get the benefit of the doubt, not the government putting it in. And if it costs us a little more to put in what the article is, and it costs us more work to put the article in, I think that's our responsibility to the voters. And I am really, Tim puts in so much work, and they jam on the machine because of the folded things, but we're gonna jam on the machines because of the folded things, whether it's a planning board article or not, that the folds screw up the machines, but.
I think a majority of people would probably want to read it more if it was a little smaller, the Reader's Digest version versus that whole thing, which I guarantee you most people that sit in that booth do not read all that. They're not going to spend the time to read all that thing. They look at it and they skip down about 3 or 4 sentences and they go, planning board recommends, or selectman recommends, or ZBA recommends. Then they, all right, we'll just recommend it. I mean, they're not going to sit there and read all of those articles. There's no way they do. No
My
way.
suggestion this year, just for this year, was that if people think that this may be the way to go or may not be, why don't we put this in as the question to the voters to see if the voters want us to not include it all in the ballot? And if the voters say, yeah, that works for me, then we just have one more year of having to do it. And then next year, we've gotten from the voters what the voters want us to do.
it would certainly cut down on people thinking that we're trying to slip something. You know, we're trying to take away the verbiage to slip stuff on
But I
the
think
garbage,
that-
but, you know, and theoretically, if the reasons were presented,
Exactly,
Once
that's
it-
what I'm
once
saying,
it-
so
once it's
I
in-
don't think that I'm not saying that I told Tammy that I was gonna be here as an opposition, I let her know ahead of time, so it wasn't a surprise. I get why she wants to do it, but if we think that this might be the way to go, why don't we just put this year, put that in as a question to the ballot, see what the voters wanna do, in which case we just have one more year, and we don't have a lot of large things happening this year. And then from this point forward, the voters have said what they want us to do, and we can do it that way.
How many people vote in town?
Last election?
Yeah.
876.
Yeah, and how many people live in town?
8,000.
So probably not
5,000
people that be opposed
extra
to it. Because not too many people show up to vote at all.
So, I will just add that I'm not so sure that this is an option. I was told by the select board to pursue this, so if you guys have an issue with it, maybe you need to talk to the select board, because that's what I've been told to do, so.
Well, I'm assuming you were told to talk to us and make the suggestion or recommendation. You're not telling us we have to do this.
Well, Richard, what was your understanding?
Because I'd be surprised if we were being directed and instructed to do something, but Richard.
I don't remember.
Oh.
I believe the select board told me to pursue this, so.
Because if that's the case, I'll be happy to go to the next select board meeting and have a conversation with them.
Like I said,
But-
I believe the select board told me to pursue this change, so here I am. You guys can
Well,
decide if you're not gonna do it.
Pursuing it doesn't necessarily
No,
mean.
I agree.
Okay.
I
You're
agree.
pursuing it.
I'm
We got
pursuing
it.
So if you guys have a problem with it, then you need to talk to someone.
Okay, I'm just trying to make sure that I understand that you're not here telling us to do it.
No.
You're
I wouldn't tell you to do anything.
you're suggesting it based on what the selectmen have discussed with you. Okay. Glenn, do you have any thoughts on this? I know you walked into the middle of it, but you know the
I
subject.
did, and I'm sorry that I walked in late. My towns are split. I have it done both ways. Brentwood, several years ago, when we had a number of large zoning proposals, were appalled at the cost of the annual report.
Yeah.
And
Right,
that.
and it's gonna affect that too.
Right.
And that.
Yeah.
And I've got to say, my preference is to put it on the ballot. And I prefer that someone can read what they're voting on. Whether they choose to or not is their individual decision. I prefer not to be in the position of explaining why I didn't give them the option to read it or not. So I prefer that it be on the ballot. We have had proposals when we put in the market rate and affordable elderly ordinances. Those were 6-8 pages long. It does have an impact.
Well, and there are, in my mind, there's almost in some cases you could make an argument that when you're proposing a whole new section, you really ought to be putting the whole thing in there. At least I could justify that. If you're making a small change to a fairly large section.
It's counterintuitive because when you're doing that, it really, a description in the actual text often wouldn't differ. They'd be the same length.
Yeah.
Like a lot of ours where we're doing minor modifications, it will be as much to describe them as to just put the text in. And so that is a bit counterintuitive. When you have something entirely new, I think that the argument can be made that a PR effort to explain what the proposal is a warranted activity. But it's all rationalization to me. I firmly believe it's better to have the text available. If they're not going to read it, they're not going to read it. If they're going to be uninformed, they're going to be uninformed. I mean, it won't make any difference what we put in the ballot. But for those that would read it and are interested, I'm not going to be the one to make the decision to not let it available.
Well, we would have a full copy there, so anybody who wanted to read it could.
That was gonna be my question.
Somewhere, you
Yeah.
will.
Yeah, you
You
have to
are.
post it at the polling place, but we can always make copies and, hey, would you like to read the full thing?
Do we have to go one way or the other? I mean, can we do some of them that are a minor change, just give a narrative for what that change is, and then anything that's a total rewrite, put the whole thing in? Or do we have to do it one way or the other?
You can, but I guarantee you, if you do that, you're going to run the risk of somebody saying, they would want to put in all the information about this one, because they're being underrated. And honestly, my perspective is, for doing this 35 years or so, if the text isn't in there, somebody says we're being underrated. It just is the way it goes. Especially if it's something that they think impacts them somehow. Their first take is to say that it's government going bad.
Well, when you had the whole thing about the rooster, they said that too, so it doesn't matter. No matter what you do in the public's eye, it's not gonna be good enough, or just gonna say.
As long as I can say they have all the information, I don't care what their editorializing is. What I'm uncomfortable is if somebody says, I wasn't aware of what it said.
Remember when we can put all the information online, people to read it? And if they wanna read it, they can read it. Then when
Yeah,
they-
we've been putting all zoning proposals online
Yeah, there we go,
over
there we
the
go.
last several years, I believe.
So we give them the information online, when it comes to the ballots, we can kind of trunk it down a little bit.
And have the full text available,
Online, if they really care, they can read it online.
Word copies.
Absolutely.
I think that if you're gonna do it that way, there should be somebody from the planning board who can be there to explain the warrant articles.
Well, you did.
That's not gonna be it.
I mean, that is an option. Is it legal to look at your phone in a voting booth?
People do it all the time.
But they do, but isn't it not legal?
You can't take a picture with your phone.
Yes, you can,
And
yeah.
put it on.
You can take a
See, here-
picture in the.
Picture, yeah, that's.
You
Because-
can't take a picture of, you cannot take a picture of your ballot.
Yes, you can.
See, I think there was a time when you could, then
I think you can take a picture of his ballot.
I'll get changed, because people were getting prosecuted for doing that.
That was my issue. I would be concerned telling people that they could go in and read their phone, read it online on their phone, if you can't do that. If you can do that, I think that that's a legitimate response. Nearly everybody has that capability. Not everybody.
Well,
But it's supposed, but
when you
it's
take
supposed
the
to.
average age of this town, I bet that out of the people that vote,
That is a bigger percentage than I would think.
Number that don't.
I think,
But if it's posted at the polls,
Let's not forget absentee ballots, people. Just
but they have a chance to research it and get the ballot.
How will they know they have the chance to research it? Without then calling the town hall and finding out.
Yeah, they're supposed to.
I mean, the requirement is that things be posted at the ballot, at the voting place anyway.
Yep.
I mean, and if you have something that's associated with the map, by law, the map has to be available at the polling place. So there's definitely the ability under a proposal to not print it, that the information is available. I just think it's.
What other town do you? did-
Newfields puts everything in. And we, to my understanding, always put everything in. And then I'm new with Kensington. Apparently, they stopped putting everything in the last 2 or 3 years, and they were uncomfortable and got lots of nasty comments. So I think we're going back to putting everything in.
I know Danville has done it for years and years and years. That's
Just a topical description. Even a conservative reading of the law, which I always try to be conservative, it says you can do that. It clearly says a topical description is all that's required. So there is there's nothing illegal about what's being proposed. It's a little more subtle than that from my perspective.
So again, we can post it online, we can post it at the planning board. I mean, at the
At
election.
the polling place.
Polling place, we can post everything everywhere.
And we could have
And then what
handouts.
it actually is, we can trunk it down and make it go easy.
We literally could have handouts that they could
There you go.
take into the voting, into the ballot.
At what point do we have to make this decision?
before the zoning articles get ready to go on to the ballot.
So when is that?
You,
Beginning of January.
January-ish.
So,
because we have 2 hearings in January, so after the second hearing in January.
so my thoughts is, why don't we see what kind of quantity we're talking about and then make a decision? Because now, I mean, we got a pretty good idea, but we don't really yet. If we're talking a lot of money, then maybe we need to think.
Yeah, it looks like we're gonna have probably 8 or 10,
Pages?
no, proposals.
Yeah.
And some of them are very short.
Some of them are a sentence.
Yeah, some of them.
So that's what I mean, why don't we try to go through and figure out what we're talking about? If we're only adding 1 or 2 pages, then it may be worth it to put them in there. If we're adding 8, then it's not.
I mean, it does interest me, I haven't had another town tell me that voting equipment was undermined by having larger
No,
ballots.
I'm not telling you that.
So what is the folding issue?
She said folding, I didn't say, it's just more ballots to fold. Like when you're getting into.
I said it was
to-
So, so,
ballots.
so if you have 8 pages of zoning amendments, then,
That's
then
eight.
the ballot is probably gonna be 6 or 10 pages.
The
If 8 of them are.
workload becomes
Every,
quite
every ballot has to be counted, every ballot has to be folded, well, every absentee vote has to be folded and then voted stuff.
Before you came in, I suggested that we not change it this year and put in a warrant article asking the voters whether it was okay if we do this from this point forward, and see what the voters want.
I
That
mean,
way they can't complain that we're doing it, because
Oh,
we're
Yes,
not.
they can.
Oh,
Well,
they
they
will. We both know that's not true,
Everybody can complain, but we have.
but again, it would
We have a foundation to
augment
stand on.
our argument,
Right,
if you are asking them to make the decision.
exactly. That way it could be like, well, did you vote last year? Because if you didn't, that, everybody else said it was okay, so that's what we're doing from this point forward. And I think it just, you know, gives you a better foundation to say why you're not doing it. And then you wouldn't have to do it again.
And you
And,
would,
you know, we hear a lot these days about
you're just gonna have
non-trans,
to jump in.
non-transparency in government. That's what we hear. Government isn't transparent.
Okay.
The most certain way of being transparent is making sure that the information you provide to them directly by way of the town, the annual report, and the ballot include everything. That's the most transparent process you can have. Anything else is a decision that you're making that people will either be fine with or they'll take issue with.
Well, there's gonna be an issue in the future too, because when anyone's not sure about what the ballot said, they go back and look at the town report, and you're not gonna have that record anymore. Just saying.
So I find the most confusion comes not necessarily from the longest articles, but from the shortest. Because sometimes when you're changing 1 or 2 words in something, people don't understand the context of
What was not there?
of the entire purpose. And in those instances, it would be far more beneficial to have a small narrative explaining what it is you're doing than it would be just to have the one sentence of saying, we're changing this from 1,000 feet to 1,500 feet. You know, because now you're saying we're changing it from 1,000 feet to 1,500 feet because. And it's the because that people don't necessarily understand. So I often find that the shorter ones can be more confusing for voters than the long ones, because the long ones are generally a big change in its entirety or a whole new section in its entirety, and they can read it through and understand it. But the shorter ones can sometimes be, you know, just misleading because they don't understand the context of the paragraph that it's going into.
Maybe we should, I clarify this first, and that is, when we put a change, I'm just looking at the ADU ordinance change, for example, do we just say to add paragraph M,
Yes.
the owners, and then we put the added paragraph in there, or if there's a deletion, to say what the deletion is? Or do we print any other part of that article?
That's all we print is the red
Is the
part.
red part.
Correct.
So there's,
So people don't see that in the big context. For example, with the ADU, we're changing what a detached is like because. They don't know the because.
except that this isn't changing, it's clarifying.
Mhm.
Okay, so.
But they don't understand that.
Right,
So
yeah.
here we're saying we're clarifying this so that
Existing.
people will understand that, you know, so
So I guess
homeowners will understand this.
I'm wondering if the concern is twofold, right? People's perception that this is not a transparent process, and that the cost of printing the ballots and handling the ballots is prohibitive. Is the solution then to print the ballots with the truncated language and have copies, regular copies, available to hand out with the ballots that then don't get fed, don't get stuffed, you know, we kill more trees, but, you know, I think it's a lot cheaper to print on 8.5 by 11 letter paper than it is a ballot. And you still give people the exact same information, it's
Yeah.
just the mechanism for them to read it is a little
And
bit
they can opt to
different.
take it or not, depending on.
Yeah, or if they wanna leave it in the ballot box, whatever they wanna do with it is fine, but they can't then turn around and say, nobody told us what was in the article. And then we don't have to worry about the ballots getting, you know, processed, stuffed, whatever. Not familiar with the process once I put it in the machine, but
How would you like to be?
Yes.
that's what I just volunteered for that too. But I feel like that's probably the compromise is to still give people the information, just give it to them in a different format that we're then not responsible for once they leave the ballot box.
I can remember, I don't know, 15, 18 years ago, when we were proposing a new high school building. And people didn't understand why and where, what was going on. They had all kinds of questions. Should we add on to the new campus? Should we build something new? Should we do this? Should we do that? And we actually put together a multi-page booklet, 8.5 by 11, that was hand-delivered to every single house in town that said, you know, this is what we want to, you know, this is a proposal for a new high school. It can be funded this way, pros, cons. It can be funded this way, pros, cons. Here's the third way it could be funded, pros, cons. What happens to the old campus if we build a new one and take the kids off? You know, what can happen to that? Every one of those questions that had come up was answered. So when people went to the polls, they had an idea of what the whole scope was, because that was such a huge scope. You know, how does this fit in to what we currently have? Where are the ages of the students? You know, is the population increasing? Is it decreasing? You know, what do we need? What's going to happen if Fremont comes in? All those questions were answered in that booklet, hand-delivered by volunteers to every single house in town. That kind of stuff doesn't happen anymore, and there's no substitution for it. We don't get town reports mailed to us anymore.
Yeah, see, that's
That's the biggest
that's
thing.
a problem.
Brentwood has a newsletter that goes out that explains every article in a very short way. There's no way of reaching the public.
Thank you, I write all of the zoning descriptions for the Brentwood newsletter.
Yeah. And my dad's on their list. So, you know, I get to see their newsletter. And when you look at it, you know, there's no newspaper that covers the town. There's no way of people getting clear, unbiased information. When we did that thing for the high school, we did the pros and we did the cons. You know, this and this, and there was no push in any one direction. It was just, here are the pros, here are the cons, you decide.
When did the annual report cease being mailed?
8 years ago?
Yeah, I was gonna say 7 or 8 years ago.
My husband always says, could be 5, could be 10, could be 15.
Last year, we didn't even buy that many, and there's a box of them still left downstairs.
Was the reason being the cost?
Yep.
Well, the cost, and people said they won't read them.
I mean, even the one that came out last year had nowhere near the information that previous ones had. And I have no idea why, but you know, you want to see, you know, births and deaths and marriages and stuff. And there was just other information. That was in there, but there were other things that had been in the past that were missing this time that people, you know, were looking for and they're saying, I can't find this. But anyway, that's neither here nor there.
Well, except that if the board of selectmen are going to put the full warrant in the annual report, you have to put something in there, because otherwise you no longer have a historical reference when everybody goes to say, oh, when did this pass? Everybody goes running through the annual reports to find the planning board article. So I think you're gonna have to print it in the town report anyway, just so you can have a reference in the future.
I mean, I think
That happens all the time in the selectmen's office.
We find ourselves, the town, going back to old town reports to the articles.
I've done it twice at the request of the Board of Selectmen,
Yeah.
once the Board of Selectmen, once the ZBA, this year.
I do it frequently to find out when something passed.
The trustees and trust funds always do it because those town reports have the articles that were written and what the fund was set up for specifically, so that, if without that information,
How it was worded.
exactly how it was written.
I mean, ostensibly, can't we go on and get the electronic version of the annual report?
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
Right, but if it's not in there.
Right,
then-
if
so
they're not-
if you're not gonna put it on the ballot, you're gonna have to still print it, because where else is anyone gonna look to find out what the wording actually was that people voted on? So, the board is
The
gonna have to
official
make,
record.
otherwise, where do you find it?
And it's electronically available in January, right? You can go on the website and look at the town's annual report in January.
oh, February.
February.
I was gonna say February. Last year it was a little bit late because we changed companies.
And February is usually when deliberative session is, right?
Yeah,
Correct.
it's usually not ready for deliberative session,
Okay, I think that's
It's like right after.
because we don't have the
That's
warrant.
illegal.
No, but what they provide is the text that's gonna be in the annual
Yeah.
report. So they do provide the text, but the annual report sometimes isn't fully printed by deliberative session, but they have the text that everybody needs to have in that order.
I'm gonna suggest we table this for a month. So we can see what kind of volume we're talking about. We should know in a month, right?
Well, we should, but, I mean, the question that Tammy is bringing to us from your board, not to belabor that point,
What
You-
meeting did
you
you
didn't need
discuss
to
this?
go
Show me
down
the
there.
minutes.
is a question of not looking just at this year, but as a, as a long-term global change that they're looking to make, regardless of what happens this year. So, I mean, we can table it, discuss it, but I think we need to, as a board, decide on what we want to recommend.
And I think the selectmen need to relook at, you're gonna have to at least print the language in the annual report anyway.
I think that happens anyway.
Well, it does now because it's part of the ballot.
Well, I think it would anyway, because it is part of the ballot, that it
Well,
will.
but it's not going to be part of the ballot if you do it.
But I think the town report would have to have the whole,
That's all I'm saying to you, is that I don't think the
No,
board talked
I-
about that
yeah.
at the meeting, but you have to have that in your head.
gotta have it,
The
because
language is gonna have to be printed
you gotta
someplace.
pick out the should be or maybe, is that, that type of stuff that
But
people
whether
are.
or not it becomes on the ballot, the annual report has to have the full text in it someplace, and I don't think the board talked about that at the,
No, we didn't.
But,
yeah.
I think about the two big things that have been the rooster and the horse thing, when we tried to do the livestock thing that didn't pass, and people didn't realize that it was completely the opposite, it was pro, and everybody thought it was con, so they,
Because they're not worded,
well, that, they wouldn't read
They're
it
not
then,
easy
because it was
to the
3 pages
layperson.
long.
Yeah, some of this stuff, the way it's written, it's not easy to understand. And so that's why an explanatory note is a good
I
thing.
mean,
Yeah.
yeah.
Now, Glenn, before you came in, I said something and there were others who thought we couldn't do this, but even if we had the full description, are we not able to do an explanatory note?
No, it's my understanding, on the ballot,
Yeah,
I thought they made us stop doing that.
it's my understanding.
Last
still
couple
doing
of
this
years.
okay.
Well,
That would
maybe we
make it
take a
more
little
fun.
time to find this information out.
Right, in the ensuing time that you wanna table this, I'll make sure of that, but I'm certain.
I mean, I'm happy to continue the discussion to this meeting next month, the first Tuesday in December. We can continue it and in the meantime, maybe get an answer to that question. But I also think that there's, merit to Ellen's suggestion about putting the question on the ballot about what the voters want, because if our tradition has been to put these things on the ballot for the full text, and if all of a sudden we stop, maybe there isn't any backlash, I don't know, but
Backlash on everything.
Yeah.
there'll be backlash on everything, sure,
We'll give
so,
them a financial buyback, they'll go for it.
At the end of tonight's
Seems to work and
meeting,
everything else.
we'll have a pretty good idea of the length of what we have this year.
Yeah, and this year is, I don't, as several people said, I don't think this year is gonna be an issue because most of what we have is fairly succinct.
And we have a lot of changes, but they're,
There's,
so short.
yeah. But again, it doesn't address the long-term question that Tammy is here talking about.
So, but if you put it on
She's
the
asking
ballot, it
not
does
just about
address
this
the
year.
issue. Because if you put it on the ballot, it does address the issue, and if the board is proactive and the selectmen are active and Tammy's active and telling people why it's a good idea, once it's voted, this question doesn't have to be raised again. Tammy's got her answer for the future, the selectmen have their answer, and that way the public made the decision that this is how they wanted the ballot to look in the future. I'm just saying it addresses the issue.
We can talk about that, Rob.
And maybe the planning board should do a better job of, like, every year addressing a small little bit of this instead of the whole thing, so we put a little bit on every year instead of
Well, the
catching
problem,
up.
That's easier said.
I know, but, you know, we did this, I don't know, I think Norm Hurley was chairman, and we went through and read every article and evaluated it, and that was the year we had like 8 pages or something.
One of the towns that I work with actually puts a limit on the number of articles that.
I like that.
yeah.
Not the, not the number of pages, but the number of changes in any given year.
That
How is that legal?
Well, that's their practice, that's their policy, it's just their operating practice,
It's not a law.
it forces them
Dixville.
to pick,
Prioritize.
and pick the important stuff.
That's like completely undemocratic.
I'm just saying,
So they certainly don't put a limit on citizen petitions.
no, they can't.
So if
It's the articles that they propose, the planning board.
And citizens petitions still have to go on in full.
The what?
The citizens petitions would still have to go on in full.
Oh, sure.
As they're written.
No, for a zoning article, I'm asking a question. I
Because
think you have to put this.
I don't think we can touch it because we, as a planning board,
we can't amend it
we-
anyway.
They can't even touch it once it's put in.
we have to hold the hearing, but we
Right.
can't make any changes, they can't make
Right.
any changes. It's merely to give it an airing, and then it goes on the ballot. So I don't think we can change that one anyway.
I can't believe you have,
Oh.
well, later you'll tell me what an
We'll-
undemocratic community that
We'll
is.
talk. We'll talk. You might be surprised, but then again, you might not. Anyway,
And I do just want to reiterate, they do so much work, you can't even imagine how much work they do, so I totally get why Tammy would.
well, I understand it from a work perspective, and I understand it from a cost perspective as well. I mean, it impacts, a lot of stuff, so.
No, you can't even imagine the work they do.
Oh, I'm sure I can't imagine.
Anyway,
Mrs. Baker, see you next month.
it's amazing.
So, would you like to join us next month?
Not particularly.
We can get back to you.
I mean.
We'll, whether you're here or not, we'll put it back on the
Right,
agenda.
I mean, it's, like I said,
And
I
you can
was
do what
asked to.
you can do what you wish. Thank you.
Hey, good night, everybody.
Have a lovely evening. So, should we put it now on the,
I'll.
you'll do it?
Yeah.
Okay,
Do we need a motion for that, or?
no, it's just gonna happen. So between now and next month, be thinking about, and Glenn, if you could check on
I
that,
will verify
just to clarify.
that we can do editorial,
I know they made us stop.
narrative.
Which makes the written stuff even longer, but at least it'd be a good description. If that's all somebody wanted to read, and then they could go further and read the full
But
text.
is there anything that would prevent us from either
Do you think-
mailing that out or providing it as a supplemental document at the poll?
Not off the ballot.
And it's
Right.
on the website anyway.
Right.
Unless is that called politicking? Would you as moderator
we-
say we can't do that?
Not without looking it up. So, like anything else, I look it up to see what they say. And if I have
It's
to get
possible
all
that
touchy
you can
people,
consider that politic.
they get touchy about what you can bring into the ballot box. So
Yeah.
again, we have a month to confirm those kind of things rather than guess.
But I think official worded, what you're bringing
We're
in.
not gonna guess anymore.
Yeah.
We're gonna look it up and
Yeah,
find
I
out.
think that's something we have to address. And just one last thing, do you think it was council that told you to stop doing it?
No, I think it was the,
DRA.
NHMA.
They
Oh,
say-
DRA.
But these DRA doesn't only can affect,
It
monetary.
was only monetary.
Monetary, so they have no, and quite frankly, a lot of their opinions aren't in agreement with the Secretary of
and
State.
I think it was something that the fire department was doing, that they said they couldn't write their narrative. Maybe it was because it involved money.
Money, yeah, DRA only money.
Yeah,
DRA.
That makes much more sense to me
Yeah.
than not being able to provide editorial comment on a zoning ordinance.
Okay, so we're gonna look up whether you can bring in the change language into the ballot box. You're gonna look up whether or not you can
Do,
do editorial and the full text.
correct.
Anything else anyone wants confirmed for next month, so that we can look it up and find out? Okay, those are the two big things.
Everyone good for now on that one? Okay, well, we've overused our welcome again on that one, on a single item. Okay, correspondence, we have a bunch of stuff in the folder, so here we go. First one is a letter dated today regarding 34 Church Street, Unit 4.
The bakery.
The bakery at Church Street Station. To whom it may concern, my name is Taryn.
Merrill.
Oh, Merrill. Oh. Taryn Merrill. And I am renting 34 Church Street, Unit 4. I had originally applied to open my business as a retail-only food establishment. However, I would like to begin baking in-house. I will be the only employee baking and have consulted with a septic designer who has determined that I am well within the allowed gallons per day of wastewater disposal for the unit. My proposed hours of operation are Wednesday through Sunday, 8 a.m. to 6 p.m., depending on the time of year. I will not have any seating, and the business will be paper service paper service, carry out only. Is any further review from the planning board required? Thank you so much, Taryn Merrill. And she gives the phone number and dates it today.
What does the fire department think about that? Is that building up to
Well-
code or?
Well, this just came in today, so I have no idea.
And she knows she still has to go to all the inspectors. This is just
Right.
the use.
Just this board need anymore. She's
Still needs
been very involved with all the inspectors and knows what she has to do that way.
I would say that there's a pizza place right next door. It's got bigger ovens than she's gonna have, and if the fire department looks at it, as far as the board, I would think that we have no reason for further review of it.
What was the use previously?
It
We've
was-
already approved her for a bakery.
For a bakery.
Takeout bakery, but the baking was gonna take place off-site, she was gonna cart it in. Now the plan is to bake on-site.
I don't think, as far as this board is concerned, anything's changed. As far as the fire department, the health department, and
State.
plumbing, and the state, it's changed, and the state's put her through every exercise there is, so.
That letter was generated by me today.
I assume,
And your retail store. Well, I think I'm gonna start, I have a small oven, I'm gonna bake some stuff here. Well, you need to go back, because that's not what you asked for to begin with. So that's why she wrote that letter today.
Gotcha.
Because Joe Nichols gave her my phone number, put in a grease trap for the three-bay sink. And I said, no, you need to write the letter and just find out if she needs any more review here. And she'll have to do the fire department, the ovens and all that, but as far as the planning board. So, she wrote that letter. She talked to Robert Stewart, and I think did she talk to you today?
No, but I get a letter from the state today that I didn't read. I just saw it a while ago,
Yeah.
that I think was an approval,
Yeah.
because the septic plan was turned in.
So I'm assuming that was a motion, and I'll second it.
That was a motion for me.
That it needs no further
No
review
further.
here. Motion by Peter Baiki, second by Lynn Merrill.
And there's no familial relationship between the Merrills. I just wanna put that on record, so somebody doesn't come back and ask me why Lynn's daughter-in-law had to do something.
Well, now you want one between the two.
I think he said it with any further review by this board.
Any further review by this?
Okay.
Correct.
We don't only.
And that this would, assuming it passes, it would be communicated in writing back to the applicant.
Yeah, she's
Yes.
gonna call me Thursday morning, but I have her information. It goes in her file when they inspect it.
Further discussion.
Who seconded that?
Lynn did.
No relation link.
I wrote that down.
Hearing nothing further, those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Abstentions? So that's unanimous. Ellen, you're not voting now, right?
Correct.
But Steve, you are. You're voting.
Yes.
Yes, and you just did.
I did, yes.
Okay, we have a letter from, or an invoice from Dennis Quintal, Civil Construction Management, for services rendered regarding some additional review of documents and such for Berkshire Dominion, $270. Oops, $270.50, and the note on the manifest says that there are no funds to pay the invoice.
Did you get in touch with that?
What, which, without,
Berkshire
Fallon?
Dominion.
yeah, I asked them for additional money 2 weeks ago.
Hold it.
I'm assuming that if we don't get it when they bring in their new plans on Thursday, they will be on the agenda? Is that correct with everybody? That's been our past practice.
Lynn, you,
Oh, no, I'm just looking for.
Yeah, actually, Charlie called
yeah,
me
but
later and
you're gonna be
said
chairing that meeting, so I need you to weigh in
made
on
sure
this.
that
Okay.
Mr. Waters had it. So they have the requirement that they need more money.
Do we know why they're coming to the meeting?
They want to, well, we're supposed to find out Thursday. They're supposed to give us new plans for
Revised plans.
Saddle Up, which is supposed to be to look at a possible new stormwater management design
And
that could be
underground.
cheaper, that they have to have Dennis review and all that stuff.
Okay.
Okay, so the question was, Lynn,
They've not yet paid their
well,
money,
we don't have enough money to pay Dennis's last invoice.
so therefore, are we going to hold a hearing if they are in
Correct.
arrears?
Because he would have a review of the new plans.
And I would think that that would be an issue, because we don't hold any hearings unless we have.
Right, that's been our practice.
That's been our
We're
practice
just,
all along.
just confirming that that's in fact the board's.
Yeah.
And if they bring new plans, if we don't have any new money, then Dennis can't review it because we have no money to pay, so.
Correct.
So the funds have to be received by the same day that their plans are due? Does that seem reasonable?
And if it is not, it will not be continued,
Oh, okay. Well, you can make that decision that day.
that they have to start over because they've had
Too long.
how many continuance? Everybody thinks that's what they're doing, just delaying.
Okay. What I have in front of me, however, is an invoice that we don't have money to pay for, so.
Yes, that's exactly what you got for.
So, I can sign off on this, but
Once you sign off and put a note when funds are available,
when funds available to pay.
and I'll pass that on.
Okay, so here's the other issue. Dennis did the work in reviewing this stuff in the past. We should have known that we weren't going to have the funds prior to Dennis doing that work. So should we hold our subcontractor hostage because we didn't collect the money from the applicant?
Good point.
And we've called the applicant, they just, several times, they just haven't brought us any money.
I think the point is, if we had Dennis do the work with no funds, why are we not paying Dennis? It wasn't
Well-
we asked Dennis to do the work.
That's,
Yeah.
I
So I
think we,
think they just go into negative figures and
Right.
on their
Balance sheet, and then
And we bill them for it if they don't
They're
come
already
back.
in negative.
They are already in negative,
They're already in negative figures.
How much negative?
1,800.
1,800.
All right, so we, I mean, this is a fairly small invoice, we can take care of it,
It
but we,
happens because they didn't give us any funds to pay the
But why did,
electrical.
I mean, my point is, like she said, why did things continue to happen if there was no money?
Because the Board of Selectmen hired somebody to do sound tests.
Exactly,
And
it was
asked to
the
pay it
additional
out.
consultant that put them in there.
But we were told there was money in the bond at that point.
There was some, but
okay.
it
we
doesn't,
need-
we can talk about that later, that's all.
Okay,
But I think we should pay Dennis. I don't think it's fair for us to ask
but,
someone to do work and not pay them.
yeah, but we don't want him or anybody else doing any more work on this.
Correct.
Until we have enough in the balance to pay. Yes?
Yeah.
Right.
Correct.
I think that a registered letter should go, not just a phone call.
Well, I did it by email, so
I
that
think the
I had,
registered letter should.
so I had an email response. But I can send a registered letter, but the email that they responded to saying they were aware of the requirement is dated like 2 Thursdays ago. So they've known for a while.
And they only have until Thursday
I was gonna
of
say,
this week.
if we send the registered letter out, they're not gonna get it in
I
time.
can get it.
Could it be hand delivered by Chief Gregory?
We could.
And it isn't just an email from me, they responded to the email.
Okay.
So
They did?
They did, yeah.
So they're fully aware of it.
Oh, they're, when I say they're aware, I mean, they responded back to me saying,
Okay, if you,
understand what the issue is, and I'm surprised they haven't addressed it yet, frankly.
well, if you've gotten confirmation that they received it via return email,
Yes.
probably as good as we need
It's probably the only thing I ask is if, as soon as one of you can, to send a reminder that there'll be no hearing. And they'll have started.
I can send that to Charlie tomorrow.
That they'll have
I'll
started.
send that to him first thing in the morning.
Okay. The next item is a letter that you authorized us to send to the Rockingham Planning Commission in response to their query of us about a letter of support for an application that they, the Planning Commission, are making to the Department of Environmental Services. And if they get the grant, they'll be able to help towns with some of their zoning relating to water, what is it? Is it groundwater, wetlands? It's groundwater, isn't it?
It's drinking water, yes.
Drinking water, yes, yes. So, we did provide a letter of support based on the board's vote from the last meeting. And if you want to read it, it's in the file.
I like that answer.
Yeah. Okay, next item is an engineering report and pre-construction meeting report for Fieldstone Industrial Park, and this was provided by Dennis, and it has pictures. So, and I don't know if you want me to read it, but Fieldstone was at the select board meeting last night asking to have their cease and desist lifted, and I believe that you did.
No. We need a confirmation from you. We lifted it pending a confirmation
Oh,
from the
okay.
planning board.
Okay,
Everything was done.
that everything was done. And I thought, Glenn, that everything was done. For Fieldstone, the plan was changed from I'm sorry.
The plan was,
The pre-construction meeting was done, the bond was posted,
the plan has been signed,
that's what I
As
thought.
far as I know, everything's done.
yes.
And that's what I said to the select board last night when they asked me. I said, to my knowledge, I believe it has been done.
Yes.
But we just need to.
Just a confirmation is all that we're doing, just so, because normally we get that from you when you've asked for a cease and desist.
Do you want me to send you something?
Yeah, just a quick email, or to Susan, why don't you send it to Susan?
Yeah.
So this is the report from the pre-construction meeting, so if anybody is interested, it's in the folder.
And as always, it's very thorough.
Yes. The select board got copies of that.
I had it in court.
Oh. Okay. which we won't talk about because it's a legal thing and we're not in non-public. All right, we have an invoice from Rockingham County Conservation District for, I believe, I'm assuming it's witnessing of test pits at Granite, yeah, TTAD, Granite Fields, the new commercial units that we're dealing with the application on right now. Balance due is $1,000, and is there money to pay this one?
I believe so, yes.
Next item is an example of a letter of credit approved by town council. Can we adopt? Question mark. Well, I don't know. Does somebody have some background here for us?
Yeah, we've had a couple of different letters of credit things come forward. Attorney Kelman had one that he liked, and then when another one came forward, he sent it back saying, refer to the first one that I've already told you all I like. So, since that's the one that town council is telling us to use, I just want the board to tell me whether or not that can be the one we refer people to. I can't do it on my own, you guys have to tell me that it's okay to do.
A letter of credit for.
For when people need to post a performance bond.
These are all the same, right? These are copies?
So it's just it's the template for a letter of credit.
Yeah, it's just a template, it's the one that he.
Would anybody like to see this?
One's a copy that, I did like, another one is actually the one that we copied it from.
Now, this was brought on because Phil Stone turned in 3
That's the one.
letters before he was happy, so he thought that would be a template, maybe in the future we won't go through that.
There's one more here.
This is
if
one
anybody
that,
would like to see it.
so this was for a specific letter of credit for an applicant. But then when Mr. Wilder from Kingston, prepared one from his bank and handed it in, and the finance officer sent it to Sumner saying, is this okay? He wrote back saying, I've already told you which one's a good one to use, tell him to use that one. So, this seems to be the one our attorney is going to approve, so can we just,
Is there really much
actually.
discussion here, or?
No, it really should just be, yes,
Yes,
that's,
Ellen, go ahead and
that's
use
the
it.
one we'll provide.
Is the board comfortable with that? Does anyone feel we should not follow our counsel's advice as far as which one to use?
That's all, I just need you guys to
Oh,
tell me it's okay.
I'll leave this one.
Yeah, we put them all back. Thank you. That's not a letter anyone has used, it's just Robin asked the question last week, so that's in as a reminder of whether the Board of Selectmen has gotten back about the lighting on Mr. Bresnahan. You asked to follow up on that at the last meeting, so.
So Richard, this is a follow-up on the lighting at the storage facility on 125.
You know, what, I think at the meeting we talked about that, I said I was gonna have Eric check into it,
Yep.
and I decided to change my mind on that, and I've asked Tom to get the submittals on the lights to show what they are, and confirm that they say they're dark sky, and so far he hadn't been able to come up with a submittal. So if that doesn't happen, then we will get Eric involved.
Okay, but it's not just a matter of looking
I
at the
know.
spec sheet, it's a matter of looking at how they're installed
I
on the
know.
site. Okay.
But
All right, I'm gonna leave this in the folder then, and we can review
they're
it again next
definitely
time.
not providing dark sky protection at this time,
Okay.
and we're buying a light meter.
So you guys are on that.
Towns.
Okay. Let's-
Moving up in the world.
The code enforcement officer will be trained on that device.
I've got one that works pretty good.
Gonna get a drone, go over at nighttime, fly over it.
There you go. Nice. You must have a drone.
Mine was for
But I
measuring.
wasn't in a video game when I was a kid.
But it's a great toy.
I'd use it once and I'd probably shoot it down.
Mine was for measuring light on tennis
I don't
courts.
know.
What is that doing there?
When I worked at a racket club.
Hey, wait a second, I put that up there.
Okay, the next item is a report on our budget, which, as usual, is underspent. But it's also a reminder here that our upcoming budget for next year is being discussed at the budget committee tomorrow night, so I will be there to present the budget for this board then. And we've already discussed our budget, so our proposed budget. So unless someone has additional information, I'm just gonna go with what we've got at this moment. Oh, look at that. Look, you scratched out all that
All
stuff.
the rest, we're done.
We're done.
Unless you want to talk about CIP, but that's gone into other business.
Oh, you mean,
Yeah.
yeah, well, I could do it now. I could do it now. All right. So, oops. If you recall, at our last meeting, we talked about the space needs for the planning office, and Ellen and Glenn provided us with, some pretty good background about the bottom line being that we long ago have outgrown our space, and we really
The
should
closet isn't adequate.
and we really should be coming up with some more adequate space for that
It was
department.
adequate for my grandmother when she was town clerk in the 1960s.
It was, just there.
So I did put together with the agreement of the board and the direction of the board, a CIP submission form to put into the Capital Improvement Plan Committee for doing a bit of a feasibility study on some space planning. We picked a number of $15,000, and we agreed that if we were to have that much money in there and we were able to fund it, that would include also some, if not full architectural drawings, at least some renditions and so forth of suggested options on how we can do this. So, one of the requirements for any department submitting a CIP request is that they're supposed to meet with the Board of Selectmen to make sure that they're aware of what's going on, keep them in the loop, and to gather any input that they might have. So I did that last night. I got myself on the agenda, and it wasn't a real welcoming. Let's just say that this was not a welcome suggestion. At least that's how I interpreted it. Richard could speak to this for himself, but it sounded that what I got from it was that the select board is aware of space needs for not only planning but for many other groups in town, and they plan on doing more of a global look at things, but they probably won't be doing it this coming year, and it sounded like it could be a few years off before they do it. And so they would prefer that we do not put this in separately, and that we wait for, this is my interpretation, Richard.
I'm listening.
Wait for the select board's action on this, and that we do not do this, that we don't go rogue and do this on our own. That rogue is my word, that was not their word. So,
I agree with that part, that not to do it on your own, but we want to do an overall study of everything. I didn't get that it was going to be years out. I think the study's going to be pretty quick. The work may be years out, that depending on what we do and what the cost, and we're going to divide it into phases by need. We're going to see what space becomes available, which I don't see any will from digitizing, because we're still going to have to keep the records. We're just going to have to put them someplace else. But, we've got a lot of space. We've got a lot of needs. I mean, everybody we talk to in town says they need more space, other than the highway department.
Will you be putting in a capital improvement plan for the 6-year plan that we're doing?
That's what we're talking about doing.
So you are gonna put it in?
if something goes in the CIP that includes us as part of that, then I think we're covered. But if the select board isn't gonna do that, then I think we should still put this in.
Yeah, because it can always come back out, and if nothing else, it's a
Well, that's what I
placeholder.
said. I said, put it in, and then if we do an overall thing, then it can come out.
Okay.
I mean, because CIP's modified all the time.
it gets modified once a year.
Yeah,
Right.
sometimes later than other.
And I would absolutely recommend that you go, that you still put that in.
Yeah.
We've gone down this gilded road with the selectmen before.
Yeah, I think, tell us about the,
Audio
we were looking at up there.
Audio visual equipment for planning board.
Oh, yeah, look at that overhead projector that we got.
Audio visual is one of the top things on the list.
We got the audio.
And
We just
from
need
our,
the video.
from our perspective, it has been for how long?
But you've never
8
put
years
that,
at
you've
least?
never put that in, and when it
If
went
you're
to
on
the
the
voters,
board,
you
so
got in
it's
trouble.
7 years.
I have a space needs report for this building that was done when Mike Priori was a selectman. I believe your mother was on that committee as
She
well.
was.
And that was in the 80s.
What does it say about the planning board? That we're fine?
No,
They're adding on to town hall this way.
exactly.
Stories.
And the welfare department was gonna be the corridor to get to it. I have the plan, just saying.
Okay, so,
So just to be funny, I mean, off the record, the last time I was on that stage, I was 5 years old in the dance recital. I had a dream about 3 weeks ago of that being planning board space. I can tell you exactly where the desks were, where the file cabinets were, and everything else.
It's my preferred location.
So the fact that it's top of mind,
The selectmen had that dream a while ago too,
if you're dreaming about that, Lynn,
I'm in trouble.
there's a problem.
Something was going on. I have no idea how that, you know how those crazy things happen? No idea.
I suggested that the planning board was more than happy to take this space, and I was told by a selectman over their dead body. So,
But I was just crazy,
that-
crazy, crazy.
it was a jovial discussion, so, I mean, that wasn't anything etched in stone. It just-
Okay,
Oh, the
so,
dead body part?
Yeah.
How much of this dance recital do you remember?
I remember every bit of it. I have the costumes.
Still
actually.
have them?
I still have them.
Do they fit?
I do. What was the ballerina? What was it?
Getting a little personal
dance.
now.
But I do still have them, and I remember the instructions that were given to us as we stood in the wings.
okay, so what I take from this discussion is that we're gonna
Yes,
leave,
go ahead.
we're gonna leave the submittal
Yeah.
as we did it, and that between now and the time that we put the CIP into final form, it might come out depending on what the selectmen put in. Okay.
Board consensus.
Yes, board consensus. Nods, heading,
Nods,
nods.
Yes.
Yes, nodding. Richard?
One last thing, I don't know who or how many of you, or if any of you were on the email list that went out today.
Oh, yeah, for the party?
We're having a party November 19th for appreciation for everybody. I mean, all staff, all volunteers, all subcommittee people, everything.
Where?
Highway garage.
Nothing but the best.
Yeah.
Wow, nothing says festive like.
Well,
We're gonna get loud.
I suggested a rec center, and they decided we could spread out more at the highway garage.
COVID center.
If I didn't get the
We've got all the
invitation, is it
picnic
safe to
tables
assume
and
I'm
everything,
invited?
and we've got to put snow by November 19th.
And all the sand and salt you can muster.
But it is RSVP, it's gonna start at 11 o'clock.
How many people will there be? Are there gonna be hundreds of people? Is that the issue?
Who's sponsoring this
We
event?
may move it later depending on
11 a.m.
numbers.
to,
11 a.m. to the crows go home. I don't know when.
Right?
do you remember the last town party we had?
No.
It was in Plasta. It was in the old Sawyer's,
Oh, the function hall.
the function hall.
Oh, yeah.
Everybody in town, all the committees showed up.
Did
They
you
were all-
dance?
Mhm.
Did you dance?
She did the recital.
But Betty Millett was one of the spearheads, and Betty introduced every single person at that, there must have been 200 people there.
Without notes probably.
Without notes.
I don't doubt
Every
it.
single person, what they did, what they volunteered for, all the different things, if there was more than one thing, she went around the entire room and introduced everybody at
Holly
that
will do
meeting.
it this year.
It was amazing.
Guarantee you.
Holly could do it.
Holly could do it.
It was
She'll take
absolutely
all the
amazing.
names.
And it was a really
Yes.
fun time. It was at night though.
Yeah. More people are gonna be able to go at night.
But it's important to RSVP, so we get some numbers.
RSVP to Susan?
Whatever the sheet says, probably Susan.
Okay.
We're gonna get an invite. I didn't get an info.
I think,
Well, I
I
think it
got,
went-
I
well,
think I got
I
the
think it
email
went
to
to
send to
department
everyone
heads.
very late today, so you'll get it Thursday.
It went to department heads and admin people, and they then were supposed to distribute to their folks.
But it didn't go out till like
And
3 or 4.
it went out late,
Yeah, so. it
just
went out
before I
late.
came
Don't
here.
worry, you'll get it Thursday morning,
I'm
bright and
gonna
early.
hold it personally until then.
We started talking
Until
about
such
this
time.
in March.
Well, see, you're not a poll worker. If you had been a poll worker, you'd gotten
Maybe
it.
that.
That was it. And you gotta start that.
I don't see the minutes on here, but we should do the minutes. Oh, yes, minutes, acceptance of minutes.
I make a motion, we accept the minutes of March 10th.
Okay, sorry.
That's corrected,
Only your mind went that direction now.
as corrected, and the only correction I found was page 3, paragraph
Okay.
2, 3, 4, where Pillsbury pastures should be presidential estates.
I have actually have two items.
Oh, there.
One of them on page 2, at the bottom of the page where it said, Mr. Koppelman said that he had been contacted by the planning commission about updating the master plan at no cost to the town.
That would be nice.
Well, that would be nice, but that wasn't quite it. It was that the RPC would be reviewing and making recommendations on updating the master plan, and that review was not going to cost us. And I heard yesterday, I had a call from Tim Roach that review is actually already done. They did it without coming to us. They reviewed our docs, and they're putting it in the form of a letter, so we should have it by our next meeting.
Cool.
Yeah. So anyway, just a quick correction on that, and then,
So change updating to review. Review.
Yep.
Put that circled.
yeah, but why?
Maybe two things.
This is, right, on page 3, under the third action item where it says, proposal to change D to better describe single-family requirements. Mr. Koppelman will work on this. I don't recall either being volunteered or volunteering myself to do that.
But it's under ADU.
Oh, I did that.
Yeah, you did that already.
I did that already.
Yeah.
Never mind. Maybe that was just a reminder to myself that I had to do that.
So just those two are.
My motion is as revised.
I'll second it.
Motion by Lynn, second by Peter Coffin. Discussion. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? Unanimous. All right. Okay, ordinance review.
So before we start that,
Yeah.
I don't know if you discussed this last week when I wasn't here, but there was gonna be a follow-up on the ADU. There was a separate house on Madison Ave. Was that ever followed up on?
Yes, basically that happened, was approved by the ZBA prior to this board taking that authority to send it, the procedure that's done now. When
Okay.
it was going to ZBA, it's when they had their approval.
Oh, that explains that.
Really?
So there's a letter or a comment right on it, approved by ZBA and the date and everything.
Okay,
You don't remember that?
so it must
I
have
do
been
not
early on.
remember anything, because the ZBA, I used to get the calculator out to see if it met the 1/3 requirement, and I don't remember anything coming before.
There's a note on it that says ZBA approved.
Okay, it may have been when I was on vacation.
Okay.
Because someone made a comment to me, I mentioned that we were going to be reviewing ordinances, and they said, why bother? If the town isn't going to enforce them, why have them? So that's what, all of a sudden, that came to my mind.
Speaking of that,
And believe me, we've been enforcing a lot of things.
the conversation about signs, are we having that tonight as well, or am I misremembering that?
You mean?
Oh, banners,
Banners, and
fence
I
signs.
believe there's a bank sign that was in
Yeah.
question.
There is a new sign with the new banner.
And it doesn't meet the.
No, it doesn't.
No,
I
it's
haven't
in
been
the
looking, to be
corner.
honest.
You have it?
No.
Okay,
I haven't seen
it's
it.
at the
You haven't seen
corner,
the new sign?
No, is it?
Where is
it's
it?
at the corner of Marshall Road and Church Street. And
It's a single pole,
it's a
Double
double
pole,
pole,
double
big
pole.
sign,
it's big material.
12, 14 feet wide,
Partners Bank.
Really?
18
According to
feet
what
in
they
the air.
turned in, it meets the footage.
What?
According to what they turned in, it meets the footage.
I want you to stand there, right? Next time you get down there. I want you to stand there, because I drive by that sign 3 times a day. And I want you to stand there, and I want you to look at that sign. And then I want you just to slightly drop your eyes to the right, to our accountant sign, which we roll up one side of a rope and down the other, because it's the size of it. That thing is 18 feet wide.
Where is it located, Pete?
Right behind the bank, facing out on 125. 2 double poles, I mean, freaking
It's
huge.
over by Marshall Road.
Actually, it's very tasteful and looks very nice.
It looks very nice, but I'm like, oh.
It does, but
Why
are
would
they
they
under
even
the
have permission
restrictions
to
of?
put it there?
Yeah, that's what I'm
Not the
saying.
restrictions of the site
You wanna see
plan.
the size of it?
Well,
Site statement for the
yeah,
whole
that's
plaza.
not on, that's not on the site plan.
For the
First of
whole
all,
plaza.
Oh, I know, I'm just saying, you know the sign that carries down on 125? It's bigger than that.
really?
I mean, it's huge. They get some money into that, don't they?
Well, actually, they're allowed to have a sign on that kiosk
Oh,
for the,
no, it's not.
It's not on the key.
Oh, no, it's on the
Nowhere
kiosk.
near the kiosk.
but I'm saying,
It is, it is a
that's where it should be.
Exactly.
Oh my God.
Because that's the sign that's approved for the site plan.
And
When you go down and look at that,
For
first
a
of all, I can't believe you
for a
haven't seen that.
multi-tenant facility. All
I
right.
can't believe you haven't seen it.
Well, somebody
they
should
get
probably
it?
check on that, Richard.
Didn't they give a sign for
I've
that?
already looked at it.
Well, and you thought it was okay?
No, I didn't say that.
Oh, all right.
Yeah, but it can't be the square footage. I thought it was like 2 by 3 or
But
something.
it had to get a sign permit.
But plus, it has to be on the kiosk. It
A
makes-
crane put the freaking thing up.
Can we,
It's,
I mean,
Bring it
it's
in.
been
To
referred
be
to,
continued.
can we
Yeah.
have the selectmen look into it?
Yeah.
And get back to us? And,
It's the last crane.
Well, we were talking about,
he's all upset now, he's all excited, he's popping
I've
the,
seen it a lot.
well,
popping
because
the
I didn't know
M&Ms.
what they were,
the feather banners.
feather
The
banners.
feather banners, yes.
Do we need Glenn to get the approved plan or anything? I mean, what is the selectmen going to look at?
About what?
The site plan for Carriage.
Do you know?
Oh, this is not on the site plan.
I know, but do they just believe us when we say that? Usually they want paperwork. Are you good?
I'll check into it.
Okay.
Richard knows where to go if he needs a copy of that.
We'll look into it.
It's a beautiful sign,
Oh, it's
Well,
beautiful.
I'm sure it is.
very tasteful. Very nice.
That's too bad, because it's not
Unfortunately,
staying.
that's not our criteria.
Yeah. It's not staying, but that's nice.
Yeah,
Put it
just
this way,
wanna
put it this
really
way, Glenn, if
show
it had
them.
lights on it, you wouldn't have to worry about the storage lights.
I'm just glad.
You mean they did-
glad
they did
Peter
light it?
didn't drive
No,
by
I-
today.
Wait till you see it. You're gonna drive it off the road. I can't believe I've seen that
They put
freaking thing.
electricity out there to light
Drive
it.
that.
It's in between, you know where the septic system is? On the corner across from the accountant?
That's where it is.
It's between the pine trees.
Yeah.
It's you gotta see it.
Well, I think we also have a
Oh,
height restriction on signs too, don't we?
Size.
And
Size, I don't
size.
think I-
All right.
We have a,
What if Richard was
We're, we're way over
Yeah.
talking about
Oh,
that.
yeah, we do have a height, 12 feet.
it's over that.
the pedestal's 12 feet.
Wow.
Yeah. Okay.
Robin, I have Robin questions.
You did that one wrong.
So this all started with Robin asking,
Oh, it's new, it's only.
are we gonna discuss signs tonight?
Yeah,
That's how we get into this.
and that was my question. So we've discussed one of them, but I know there was some question
Well, there's
about feather
more generic
banners.
stuff. I mean, there were the issue of, I mean, we've dealt with it before, the feather banners in our current sign ordinance are not permitted, and from time to time, all of a sudden, they start flourishing in town. And the last time we did it, there was an effort made to talk to the individual property owners, and they got taken down. But now they're back in different places.
Different property owners.
Oh, yeah. But then there was also the discussion about, Alan, was it?
Temporary.
Did you bring it to us? What about,
90-day grand opening.
for things like grand openings and
Yeah.
to add that as a possible,
I
and
just
brought-
we have
That's
that
what I
in
thought
here.
the question
That's
was
in the
about,
packet.
like, I didn't
And that's in the
realize
packet.
it was
And that's in the packet to discuss.
Okay.
But we didn't go further than that, for things like the feather banners. But I think the board at one of its previous meetings said that they wanted to take a closer look at the sign ordinance and see if, you know, what made sense and what didn't make sense in it. But I don't think we've done that. We haven't looked at it as a project, if you will.
I have a question. Regardless of what the board may or may not be looking at for March, why are we not gonna ask people to take down things that are that are not permitted?
Oh, they're separate, they're not related.
Well, they kind of became related at the last meeting,
They did.
yes.
How so?
I didn't recall that.
How so?
Because we talked about doing it and a board member said, well, if we're gonna change it, we might as well not look at it.
Oh, I don't remember hearing that.
That was last meeting?
Yes.
I wasn't here.
It was the time before that meeting, because it was you who said it. But I'm just saying that if we don't allow
All right,
them,
the point is, we should be enforcing
yeah,
the ordinances that are in
Existing
place.
codes.
Right.
And if we wanna also talk about possibly changing them, that's a separate section.
Yeah.
Well, if we've asked other people to remove them, and now other businesses are allowed to have them up, and we're, I don't know.
That's,
shouldn't we have?
Consistency
You need money
is
for-
ridiculously
yeah.
inconsistent to me.
Yes, it is.
All right, it's added to my list.
Richard, go pick
Take-
up all the feather.
Richard's taking notes.
You know, if I took one, I might go on camera.
Nice self-editing right there.
All right, well, while we're on the subject of signs, would you like to take that one in the packet and do that one now?
the, grand opening?
Yeah. And I don't know where it is in the pile here, but
Looks like more.
there it is. Got it.
And again, this just came up because frankly, when the bank started putting up signs for their grand opening, it was one of those that everybody did one of these, oh, we won't notice them because we don't have anything in our ordinances. And I asked the building inspector, would it be helpful if the board had something that allowed people who are doing grand opening to have a little more oomph?
That's good, yeah.
And that they could apply for. I think that some of this is a little restricted. I think the duration being 1 week is a little short. But I just printed out pastels, they had one, I don't care if the board does it or not, but I did notice that everybody was just doing, we'll pretend we don't see it.
I think it's an excellent idea.
Hmm?
I think it's an excellent idea.
Yeah. But, one of the problems.
Put a reasonable time frame on it and go with it.
Is a week enough time though?
Yeah,
Well,
that's,
I think that's small, I think
Oh,
it
I
should
think
be more.
that's very small,
yeah.
Okay.
30 days.
30, 60.
Yeah, see, in Newfields, we're doing the same thing, we're doing a temporary sign, and it's 30 that we're,
I think 30 is more than reasonable.
Yeah, I think 30 is
I
reasonable.
mean, here it says that the events must commence within 90 days of the issuance of a certificate of occupancy. But how many times are those certificates of occupancy delayed?
And I have no problem with, really, take on if anything,
So-
I'm not,
Yeah.
I
You know,
have
just,
no personal
Bank
attachment
was
to
in there
anything.
2 months before they had an occupancy permit, so that means they would have gotten 150 days out of the temporary signs.
does anybody else find as funny as Robin does, the suggestion here that you can have a hot air balloon attached with your grand opening activity?
But no other balloons.
But no other, you can't have latex or Mylar or helium ones, but you can have a hot air balloon, which could be 300 feet wide.
Because I thought that was ridiculous, actually, but I wasn't trying to edit, I wanted the board to.
That
This is the
seems,
most ridiculous thing.
that seems absurd.
I think they did that because Goodyear and all those put those big blimps up when they have a grand opening. The
But you
tire
can't put up
places.
a helium balloon.
So you
that's
can,
not a balloon, that's a.
It's an
No, I think
amusement.
you're talking about,
yeah, a blimp is a vehicle.
It's an airship.
Yeah, it's an airship.
I don't mean the full-size blimp, I mean the small ones that they have.
Well, latex and
Oh, yeah.
Mylar can hurt
6-foot
birds.
ones that they
A
put
hot
up
air
around.
Not the
balloon
ones that you
doesn't
drop.
kill people.
Yeah, not the drivable ones.
This is ridiculous.
I have no idea why we would incorporate in our sign ordinance the provision that you could ever have hot air.
Why don't we just scratch balloons altogether?
yeah, I don't think it's an issue because there's a special, for hot air ballooning, you wanna go to the selectmen for a special event permit.
Hang on.
Are we voting today or which vote?
We don't vote today.
There was no vote for Kingston.
No, none of
Only
our,
cities.
no,
No,
No mayors.
you are not the only person to have asked.
Can we
I
ask-
think the latex mylars, I know why they're doing that, it has to do with, their hazard aviation, and environment. Whereas hot air balloons are not a hazard aviation, they are part of aviation theoretically. However, hot air balloons are covered under this selectmen's special event permit thing. So I don't think we need to even talk about balloons in here.
I don't think they should be talked about here.
I've already crossed it out.
Okay.
so what about pennants and inflatables?
Penance.
That's not what I find
Oh, are those gonna be one of those,
Yeah, that was.
Oh, those things, yeah, with the arms.
yeah, that thing that,
Oh, those
whatever you
things.
call them.
Are those legal?
They're very catchy, and if what you're trying to do is announce something new,
funny. Draw attention.
floppy guy is really effective for doing that.
For up to about a week and then nobody sees it.
They really are, I gotta tell you, if the goal for a grand opening is to raise, perspective, then I think inflatables are a legitimate thing to use.
What's a wave runner?
A what?
A wave runner, other than a
Jet ski?
jet ski?
Yeah, that's what I thought
That
too.
one
We
that's
just had
green
them say
has the
that.
words going.
Oh, up there.
Oh, an animated sign?
Back to the balloons, actually. Should we spell out balloons are not permitted as part of any type as part of this? Because I'm thinking about the ones that like car dealerships that go,
Those big feathered things.
yeah, the big tethered
And like
balloons
the
that
ones
have.
they use for temporary cell phone antennas that they had up in.
Well, real
Fremont.
estate
Still in
signs.
Fremont, yeah.
Fremont, okay, so yeah, it's,
If we leave it out altogether, then,
Well, if we're gonna let them have floppy guy, they don't need the balloons.
okay.
yeah.
Hey, how about floppy guy in the hot air balloon?
Well, that would be.
I would attract attention.
That would, we're crossing out what to do with
I
balloons.
think that would burn somehow.
So this says, all temporary signs must be of the like and type currently allowed. They must be affixed or displayed in accordance with all sections of the sign ordinance. Well, some of these they have on here are not allowed in our sign ordinance.
I think we specifically say that temporary signs are not allowed, do we not?
We do.
No, we
We're
have-
saying
no,
that they
we-
are allowed in this.
Well, I know, but
Well, we should really not have.
No, we have, we do allow temporary signs and there's restrictions on them. In fact, we'll have to look at it where it is, but.
So just take out that sentence that say they have to comply.
say what, Ron?
It's 303-1.
Thank you.
Just take out this thing that says all temporary signs must comply with the ordinance, because this is letting them use it specifically for 30 days. And if there's something in here you don't like, if I don't know what a wave runner is.
Yeah, we just take that out because.
Yeah, I just did a Google search and it seriously only talks about jet skis, just over and over.
Maybe they're jumping out of a hot air balloon. Okay, so we're taking out wave runners. Are we leaving in feathers?
Leave it in what?
Are we leaving in
That's feather banners.
feathers? Or
Well, they're
just-
temporary, right, under this, so the.
Exactly.
Yeah, sure.
And taking out the sentence that says all temporary signs?
Right,
That will,
because obviously Plasto allows all those things that we don't.
they don't allow feathers.
I think we should allow buntings anyway. I mean, we put buntings up on our building for the 4th of July and everything.
Yeah.
You know, patriotic buntings.
Yeah, I think they're not.
And I didn't realize that they weren't,
I think they're considered like flags.
I
flags
think
of
a
any-
bunting that looks like a flag has no advertising on it.
right.
Yeah.
That's not a sign.
No.
That's
This
Yeah,
would
bunting.
be a
that's just-
bunting that
just a
that-
Bunting you can put up anytime. It's bunting that has some sort of advertising that would fall under this.
So temporary signs are permitted for a 30 days.
which would be consistent with what the time frame we're looking at.
Yep, so that works.
Mhm.
And they have to conform to the specific standards in section D.
And this would probably be one of the sections in there that it's pointed to.
Signs displayed internally within the border of a window of a building. This doesn't seem to address that at all. Directional signs, identification signs, freestanding signs. So the freestanding signs, it has, depending on which district it's in, size requirements.
What did you guys decide to do when the grand opening events must commence within 90 days of the issuance of the certificate of occupancy? Are you taking that out?
I think that we shouldn't base it on the certificate of occupancy, just.
90 days of opening.
We're going 90.
I think 90 is a lot.
I do too.
Yeah, I think.
We got to
we're
do-
saying
we
that
can only have
we're
it for
giving them 30 days to do this, so.
30 days after it opens, right?
No, it could be 30 days, it could be a week before they open and
Okay.
3 weeks after. You know, they
Yeah.
have
Within
30
30
Let
days.
them pick it.
So we can just take that sentence out then.
Yeah.
I think so. Because they're gonna have it for 30 days. When they decide it's going to best fit their
30
business is
enough.
up to them.
Yeah, if they wanna do it 3 months after they open, because they had a soft opening, whatever,
Yeah.
yeah.
So
I think
for,
signage for 30 days is enough.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's no longer an event after
Right.
open.
It's not going to,
It's not a temporary event.
So do you wanna still put, I mean, obviously we'll say Kingston businesses. Do you wanna still leave that opening paragraph that if you've undergone major renovations and so
I've
keep
got
that
a
in?
question
I think
about
that's
major
okay.
renovations, and that is that now we're getting into less well-defined things.
judgment call.
Yeah, well, we painted the supply run,
Oh,
we
yeah.
qualified. So, you know, is it a major renovation that they closed down for more than 30 days or something to do these renovations, and now they're having a reopening? I think that we should define it as businesses that, new businesses or that have closed for renovations and are reopening.
That they're not covered, or are?
No, they are, yeah. I don't think that they can say that just some store decides to say that, well, we moved our, you know, our shelf around a little bit.
I'd be,
So, I'm sorry, go ahead.
I was gonna say, I'd be more in favor of taking out the major renovations part and leaving it new businesses and changing ownership.
Okay. Yeah,
That's
that takes out,
that would be my suggestion.
it takes out the gray area.
We could put a reopening
or a
due to
change of
major
use,
renovations.
right? So I'm just thinking about like Kingston House, if they're gonna open a hair salon, that would be.
New business.
That's a new business.
That's a new business.
Okay.
Within another business.
Okay. Business within business.
That indeed it is, but it is a new business.
And so their signs would all be for the hair salon, not for the Kingston
Gotcha.
6 House.
So if now says new Kingston businesses or Kingston businesses that have had a change in ownership, a change of ownership or whatever.
Yeah.
Okay, got that one.
Now what about new branch locations?
Yeah, I don't think, I
That's a-
think,
that's
I
a
think that should
stupid
stay.
reason. Yeah.
That's a stupid
No,
reason.
it says do not qualify.
They
Yeah.
don't-
Oh, I see, yeah, pretty much.
Yeah, it says they don't qualify. Doesn't that make sense?
I think that should be in there.
I think that
You
makes
don't get
sense.
to advertise something going on in Manchester just because you're a franchise.
Right.
I wonder if they mean, like, it's a, you know, like, community bank opens up a branch at one of the old banks in existing banks in Plastow. That's a change of ownership, so they could qualify. But,
But
this
if
is-
Partners Bank opens a bank in Hampton,
Right, and it
They
says
doesn't
grand
qualify.
opening. Well, like Bob's Furniture does that. They advertise a special whenever they open a store someplace else.
yeah, yeah.
So I think it should specify new branch locations in other towns.
It says that, in other locations do not qualify. So,
This
Another
says
in the same
further
town.
down in Kingston on 125, are they allowed to then?
Well, yeah, because that would be a new
That would be a new
business,
business.
Yeah.
so they would be allowed.
So then it should say.
At the new business location.
But this one can't put up balloons and
Correct.
dancing people
If they open
because
up.
of one in another part of town, the one in the other part of town.
It's very funny to me. The word location should be in here twice.
Yeah, that is,
Locations do not qualify. I think that's.
This is definitely, I think, implying that new location is not in the same town.
Yeah.
yeah.
We can make, I guess we can make arguments about there being a new
Hold
it.
location of the same
Stop,
business
stop.
someplace in town.
Stop talking, stop talking.
I'm excited, God.
We're using our state-of-the-art
Go ahead.
All right,
system.
all right, continue.
This clearly is, the implication is that this is a branch that's located outside of your town. And if somebody was opening a branch location in Kingston, that would be a new business.
Yes,
You
but
can
the
add
point would
parking.
be that you couldn't put balloons and stuff at the existing
You
location.
do it at the new business site.
At the new business site,
So
exactly.
that's why it says other locations, because it's not
This
only
goes-
Kingston, I mean, it's if you have a
So if we wanna
secondary.
cover both those things, why don't we say in other locations or communities?
No. I
Dunkin'
just-
Donuts is
Another
probably the only
location's
one
in-
that would fall into that. They open this branch and they open another branch in town. So what are we saying, that they can only celebrate at the new branch, they can't
Yeah.
celebrate it
Well,
both?
why don't we say
Yes.
that? Company-wide celebrations of new branch locations must occur at the new location.
Yeah,
There you go.
yeah.
Yeah.
Why'd you say
Must
it's in
occur
this?
only at the new
Only, yeah,
location.
say that again.
That was perfect. Lucid, quick, concise.
That's what I do.
You're like a surgeon. You were like an ordnance surgeon.
Don't anyone give him any sugar. Just saying. So we're saying must occur only at the new location. Is that what, okay.
Yep.
Okay.
Well, then it's not really a company-wide celebration either.
Yeah, you're.
So take out company-wide, celebrations of new branch locations must occur only at the new location.
Yeah, I think they're coming right.
So it says no off-site signage is allowed. So if a business has like a one-day event, can they put up a directional sign somewhere so that people know how to get there?
I'm sorry, where are we?
That would be covered under their special event
Okay.
Oh, okay.
permit.
Yeah.
Because right now, the sign ordinance doesn't allow off-site signage.
Okay.
Yep,
You said does not allow, right?
correct.
Are we, we're not proposing to put the cost of the sign permit in our ordinance.
I'm hoping not.
I hope.
No,
Oh, no, we don't need to do
We
that.
purposely put that separately.
we're
Yeah.
rewriting all the permit
But do we
fees right
agree
now.
with that amount so we can tell the inspectors and the selectmen that that's the amount
For
that we think it should be?
What's our current sign permit?
Current is $25 per sign.
So for a permanent sign is 25, and for
Temporary.
temporary one, we're gonna do 4 times.
Well, because you allow them to have at this point 5 at least.
It's for lots
No,
of
it's up
potential
to 3
signs,
forms
short
of
period of
10%.
time.
I'm sorry,
Sign,
what?
my point is, the sign ordinance permit fee should not be $25.
It's not gonna be.
Exactly.
I mean, that means that Robert could look at his sign for what, 10 minutes?
$25 per sign.
That's way too low.
I know.
That's
And
way too low.
sometimes
And you guys are looking at
pay
fees
that,
right now.
Peter?
I say they've all been done, I could have brought it.
Perfect.
I'll bring a copy
That's
of the fee.
ridiculously low.
So we asked for a sign.
So we're taking the fees out of this.
No
So-
fee?
We've pretty much taken half
No,
of
it's
it away.
coming out of this part, it's gonna go in the fee section of the,
So that,
Should we say the fee is available through the selectman's office?
Yes.
so that it
So
comments
that
go
people know there
forward.
is a fee, because
The duration of the grand opening sign package permit is 1 week.
it's 30 days.
30 days.
30 days.
We agreed on that one.
Which is consistent with the existing ordinance.
Just a crazy question, but do we really need a fee on that? For a 30-day sign to promote a business that we want to come to Kingston?
What do you do for, special events? What do you charge for special events?
You have all types
Not
of
for
things
the
to pay
sign.
your people.
It
No,
totally
sign,
depends
but-
on,
but
it totally
you
depends
charge-
on how you're reviewing these.
You have to. pay
Someone
the
has to
people
review it,
them.
someone's going to have to,
By the time we review it and do anything about it, the 30 days is up.
Well, and that's the point, was check.
Well, that isn't how it's
30 days
supposed to
and they're
work.
down.
That's why they plan ahead and get the permit. I mean,
that may be reality, but that's, let's step back from
You're
reality.
talking to planning board, they're still using a tape recorder, Glenn.
I mean, we're trying to encourage,
Peter, don't take that.
we're trying to encourage businesses to succeed.
Correct.
And a grand opening thing to help them.
And that's why we're putting this in, to be able to help them. But you still have to pay people to review it, do the paperwork, file it, and in 30 days, make sure it's down.
So Plastow had a fee for real estate signs,
Ah,
and they got rid of it,
right.
because they said it cost way too much money
To administer.
to administer it.
you have to come up and going down.
Because they had to go put a sticker on it, then somebody had to go, we had to go get your permit, which gave you a sticker, you put the sticker on the sign, and somebody had to go from town hall and go and make sure the sticker was on the sign, and it cost way more money to enforce than it was worth, so they stopped it.
All right,
Yeah,
we'll
we
talk
just-
about fees later.
Yeah, I think it certainly should be less, but.
So I think what we've done is we've gone through this pretty thoroughly, and what we have done is made the Board of Selectmen happy because we've cut this in half. So it'll be half. Take what we put in the top.
I'll use really teeny tiny type.
Okay, that was good.
So, the next step on this would be to bring it to public hearing, and if you would like to do that, we should do that by vote.
Make a motion to bring this to public hearing.
Okay.
Second.
Motion by Lynn, second by Peter Baker.
Remember the little thing you used to get the damn gopher coming out of the hole?
Do we know when we would do these public hearings?
Yes.
Because we could put a date on
We're
it.
gonna try to do them all at once.
Yeah,
That would be good.
first meeting in December.
That's what I was gonna.
Well, you can do the first meeting in December, but you're already talking about other things that you might not have finalized, but you might as well get these done and going, because then you still have your January 4th meeting is your public hearing on warrant articles.
Are we meeting the second, are we meeting in December on the 15th?
No, you're meeting on the 7th, yeah, the 7th and the 14th you meet,
In December?
yes.
Oh, that's right, okay.
And January 4th is gonna be the published public hearing on the warrant articles. But you can, if you guys wanna do something ahead of time and have the.
I think we better.
Because you have to have them on January 4th, because you have to have that meeting for any, petition warrant.
Yeah.
So, what's today?
If we get these out of the way, then it's less on that night.
Well,
Yeah.
plus it also gives us an extra date in case we need to continue any of these for changes.
So December 7th is when you wanna have the public hearing? Is that what we're saying?
That's what they're saying.
Yeah.
All stuff.
What's today?
And do we have anything else on the agenda for the
This
7th?
is
Question about ballot wording ordinances,
Well, we're bringing,
the stuff we talked about.
Tammy-
Would all be part of it.
Tammy's
So
coming.
my suggestion is we don't have any public hearings that night.
You don't anyway.
Yeah,
You've
this
already
first-
We
made
don't
that.
normally, but I'm just saying, sometimes we do a continuation.
Yeah.
No, I'm,
No.
yeah, the board's policy now is that unless you have someone
The
on
continuous,
the 16th who you haven't heard from, but
yeah.
public hearing on warrant articles. Okay, so we're gonna bring that one to public hearing.
Did we vote? No.
No.
All in favor, say aye.
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 We're still discussing the date.
Opposed, abstentions, it's unanimous. And it was Lynn and Peter.
Yep.
Ready for the next one? How about an easy one?
structures?
So how about this one that has very few words? On amending section 110.6B of the commercial 3 zoning to read as follows. Is that I or L? Setbacks for structures. Structures for this requirement are as defined in
It's like
article.
an exclamation point.
Oh.
It should really be a
Oh, a what, a one?
one.
Is this a change or are we adding it?
This is a change.
Do we-
This is
we-
the change
Where's the original wording?
as, the original word, and I can read to you. This is the change being required because of the Dufresne pool. So that that language in the ordinance does not define structures differently than it's defined everywhere else in the zoning book.
So this section will now read setbacks for structures, period. Structures for this requirement are as defined in Article 2B17 of the Kingston zoning ordinance.
Right, which is the definition of structure in the preamble to the ordinance that some of us thought should have applied in the Dufresne case, but our council didn't feel comfortable with that. So now he will feel comfortable that the definition is the same in both places.
After structures, you said period, you had a semicolon, should it be a colon?
Oh, I'm sorry.
That's okay,
It shows us a semicolon.
but I'm not sure a semicolon is right.
It should be a number one.
It should be,
So-
I
It should be the number
I
one.
thought it should be a period because then it starts, it's got
So would this
capital
have,
structure.
would this have applied to the project on 107? When you couldn't touch 200 feet of the buffer area for the residential?
No, because
No,
this
that's
is
a different one,
commercial.
Peter.
Well, isn't
You're
that,
talking about the bottom.
The
But
bottom,
that's-
We haven't
oh,
talked
I'm
about
sorry, I'm sorry.
We haven't talked about, that's separate than this.
so setbacks for structures, period?
It should be setbacks for structures, period.
I apologize, this is all one.
Okay.
Are we clear on that one? You wanna move it to, public hearing? Would you
So
like?
moved.
Second?
Nice.
Nice. Same day.
Motion by
Just get
Robin,
warmed up, look out.
by Robbins,
Like actually,
second by Lynn. Discussion. In favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, abstentions. And that's unanimous, and I'm assuming we're talking about, well, all of these will be on the same date, December 7th?
And I'm sorry, Ellen, please.
What?
It's setback for structures and it's actually a full colon, not a period.
I thought colon was correct.
Oh, well, it's a semicolon.
It's a
I know,
full, it's a
not
full
like-
colon.
it's a cold.
Okay.
No, I feel.
Somebody could have used larger type on this.
I myself like the exclamation point.
So this-
Hear me.
Okay, so the second sentence on this one is
Which one?
on the same page. That was, we're done with this page, right? That's,
Isn't this gonna, I thought you had new language.
The second one is actually language to be put into the innovative zoning ordinance.
okay, so that's the one you were asking about,
I
Peter.
was asking about that.
That was the one Peter was asking about.
So this is on here, but it doesn't say what it's.
Right, it doesn't, yeah, I'm sorry, I don't know why that
No.
doesn't say it. It doesn't, and now I have to find the innovative zoning ordinance because I'm in panic.
204.
See, this one is innovative.
204.
We need a number on it.
Well,
204C1. A.
C1A.
A.
That's the external setback?
Yeah.
So is this all new wording, or is this,
This is totally new wording.
all right,
So is it
so,
going to have its own section, or are you just adding it to existing?
Well, that says front, no structure or parking area for cluster development should be located within 200 feet from a public right of way. in existence prior to the cluster development proposal. And we're taking that out? Because that's your front external setback.
Yeah, I think you're
Or did you
adding,
need to
adding
add
this,
that in?
add this in, after the setbacks, like number 4, project-related. Mandatory buffer area. Where's the buffer area? Is all these setbacks, or is it?
It's under the cluster house.
One,
Yeah, it's 204.
Should it be put in as an exemption?
I think it should be added to it, but we're also saying that no structure or parking should be within 200 feet of a public right of way. Do we still feel comfortable with the 200 feet? Or should some things be allowed closer to a public right of way than 200 feet?
Cluster development. Oh, that's, yeah, that was the Marshall that came up.
This is the thing that stopped that from being a cluster and made it a traditional.
But in that particular case, it was because they couldn't put the drainage
Drainage.
structure.
That's what this says, that's why I'm
That's
asking.
why this is.
Right,
That's why
but
we did this.
Lynn is now asking a question that sort of goes beyond that and says, well,
Should it still be 200 feet?
should we restrict other things?
Or should we make that not 200 feet, but 100 feet, or 150
That's what
feet?
she's saying.
Just,
For things like structures, not necessarily drainage structures,
Yeah, yeah.
like buildings or roadways or.
But wasn't the idea in this that it still gives the appearance of maintaining the
Yeah.
buffer, whereas a parking area wouldn't?
Correct.
correct.
That was the justification when the whole innovative thing was done, was
Yeah.
to try to maintain, a bit of seclusion, if you will,
Yeah.
for the development. And thus the setback.
So do we just make it a separate, a D?
So.
No, I think you just make it part of, after what it says.
In which section, Lynn?
Oh, I think under external setback, we say front.
180C.
A structure or parking area closer than 200 feet, with right of way in existence right of way. And then,
just say project-related drainage,
yep, okay,
if predominantly natural in appearance, can be there,
Yep.
which makes sense.
are folks good with that? Just adding
And
it,
that's only for the front though, or is that also for side?
Only for the front.
just for the front.
Just
The natural screening within the external setback area, so I think we wanna put it in C.
Oh.
The natural vegetation within the external setback areas
Okay,
shall be left undisturbed except for the purposes of providing access to public streets and ensuring proper site distance. I think we want to then add it as the last line. It
That's a
says,
good idea.
project-related drainage and stormwater management treatment devices, if predominantly natural in appearance, may be constructed within the mandatory buffer area. We might want to change that to say within the external setback, not the mandatory buffer area.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Then
Because it's called external setback everywhere in this ordinance.
Right.
That's really what we want to say.
so I'm changing the new mandatory buffer area to say mandatory, what was the word you used?
the external,
Within the external setback.
setbacks, yeah.
So are we taking out mandatory too?
Yes.
External, is that all around the property or just the front? Does it dictate front only?
No, side and rear, it's 100 feet instead of 200 feet.
Okay.
Yeah, so it's just external setbacks, plural.
If you put it in this section, it doesn't matter where.
Exactly, it's just within the external setback, so if you're doing it in the side, it's within 100 feet of the property line. But if you're in the front, it's within that 200 feet of setback.
so it's 204.2C1C.
2042?
204.21C.
C1C.
Dot
C1.
2, dot
C1.
dot
Yeah, 2,
1.
C1C.
That sounded like a simple right there.
204.2, capital C, number 1, small c.
That was two of them.
within the external setback.
Correct.
And
It's
not gonna say
scratched.
March 2020.
320, yeah. They'll scratch it. This was just proposed wording from another ordinance, now actually for Kingston. And so those two would have to be voted on to go to public hearing.
Well, we already did the first one.
Yeah, the second,
We just have to vote on this one now.
yeah.
Make a motion.
Second.
Bring us to public hearing on December 7th.
You got it.
By Robin, second by Lynn. Discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? That's unanimous.
Okay, how about the ADU one?
Uh, Can you guys discuss something else, because I gotta take a quick break, and, I'd like to be here for the ADU one since I proposed that.
Can we take a quick break anyway?
Oh, sure, we can do that. Why don't we take a 5-minute or so break? We're gonna take a little So, somebody suggested we do the ADU one, we can do that. Ellen,
Yeah, it's pretty simple and straightforward.
So Ellen printed these again and put the changes in red.
Covered all three.
Although, only half of it's got,
Oh,
it's missing the section for
missing
the,
something.
No, no, it's space. Remember the
no,
way they printed?
I know, but there were two sections that I made adjustments to and they're not there.
Well, nobody gets it.
Wait a minute, I'm looking at the original
I
one.
printed this offline, maybe I didn't. maybe-
So I threw my original away. Oh, no, it's here.
No, no. And I
I
have,
was looking at my original, because I was trying to make
yeah,
it.
the one we can guide, that email has both sections.
So the two sections that I made changes to, one of them was section 206.4D,
Correct.
where I added some wording.
So that one shows on.
That
this
one
column.
shows on your pages. The one that
this is,
doesn't show is,
M,
is,
same one, yeah.
no, I thought there was.
is M.
Yeah.
Can I just copy this from my notes? Thank you.
And I think what happened
So-
is there was a gap, and
Yeah, well, when I did the changes, I did them, I tried to do it so it would be easy for people to see it within the ordinance. And when I did that, I had to convert off the website from PDF to Word, and when I did that, it created some additional spacing, and I couldn't get rid of it, and so. All right, so 206.4 under D was my attempt to, well, I'll read it. It's in the section that talks about the appearance of the property, and I added this wording. Further, when the ADU is contained in a detached structure, new or existing, it shall have the appearance of an accessory use, for example, a garage or a barn, thereby maintaining the appearance of a single-family property. In no case should it look like a second dwelling unit.
Well done.
Just, I mean, the ordinance says that already.
yeah.
This was just for clarity. And then the, oh, now I don't have my other
We'll
one.
have it in.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, Ellen was copying it for her.
Go ahead.
So the next one is,
It's right after,
206.4 M. So it looks like I added that one. The owner shall, as part of the, oh, and this relates to the application. The owner shall, as part of their application to the planning board for a detached ADU or one that alters the footprint and or appearance of the primary dwelling unit, provide a visual rendering or other suitable graphical representation of what the property will look like once the ADU is completed. So again, just, it says that more or less in our application. It didn't say it in here, and it's just to make it consistent.
Can you say, can you just change that word from property to structure?
Yeah.
Representation of what
Property will look like once the
what the
ADU is
property, what the structure will look like?
Well, because
Yeah, okay, sure.
if they give us a site plan that shows everything on the property, they're gonna say they met that standard.
Yep.
Yeah.
Can we also take out the word suitable? Unless we're gonna define what suitable is.
Provide a visual rendering.
Other suitable graphic
Take
representation.
out suitable.
Or other graphic reference, not say suitable.
Because then we later define it by saying, representation of what the property will look like, so that we're telling them what the graphic representation has to be of, what the structure is.
Provide visual rendering or other similar graphical representation. Visual rendering.
I think other graphical representation is fine.
That's the one.
Yeah,
Just other graphical representation of what, yeah.
as long as it,
So remove suitable.
yes.
So we're removing suitable and we're changing remaining
Well, actually,
property to structure.
remaining other suitable. So visual rendering or, or other, sorry.
That's okay.
Because suitable is that it shows what the
This is-
Excuse
building
me, the sentence,
Look
the
like.
first part.
Which we define, so I don't think.
Yeah,
we
yeah,
just say
exactly.
suitable, 'cause
That's,
subjective.
yeah, right. So
206.4,
it's redundant.
That's our little ordinance search,
adding M,
doing her magic.
which means that
And
N
renumber the
keys,
rest.
right?
Yeah.
Make a motion, we move forward with the changes to the ADU requirements for 206.4 D and M as edited.
Hold on, I have more edits.
Okay.
So in the first one, under D, can we take out the word further? And just start the sentence with when? And for the sake of consistency, I don't think the word detached needs to be in quotes. It wasn't in quotes previously in the.
Yeah, good point.
So, going back to this one.
We're on D.
We're back to D. So you're suggesting removing the word further and starting it with the word when.
When the ADU is contained in a detached, no
Yep.
quotes, structure.
And removing the quotes from detached.
Now, the only thing is that, later on you say that if it's in a detached or if it alters, I think by the quotes you put around detached would imply that detached or altering the footprint, so I don't know if we have to put that in as a definition of when the ADU is contained in a detached structure.
Well,
No, I
in
guess
the
I
previous
think that's,
sentence, it says when the dwelling unit is not in a detached structure, and then we go on to say when it is
yeah,
a detached structure, this is what the.
yeah, I guess,
I mean, this one in D is specifically for a detached structure.
yeah, that's good, that's fine. And later on, we say that we want to make sure that, if you modify your house, not just to be detached, but by putting an addition on it, like an attached garage type of structure, that it continues to look like a.
Or just expanding the footprint of the existing house. I mean, you
Yeah.
still want it to look like a
house.
single-family home.
Yeah, because you could build it to look like a duplex.
Right.
And it
And
wouldn't
then
be, wouldn't be detached, but it would be, look like a second dwelling unit.
And in a single-family residential zone, duplexes aren't allowed. So,
Right, exactly.
Robin?
The only other change, this is all semantics, but consistency is important. So,
Yeah.
in no case shall it look like a second dwelling unit instead of should.
Yeah, it makes it more official, yeah.
In no case
We only use shall.
shall.
Yeah.
Shall indicates mandatory, or should,
Indicates shall.
gives them the option.
Doesn't just indicate it on ordinances, spell it out that it means.
Yes, yes,
Yeah.
use the word shall, indicates the procedure is
And
mandatory.
shoots a shell.
And then I'll second Lynn's motion.
Well, that was a trick. That was not good. You didn't have the opportunity. Aha!
She snuck right up on you.
Oh wait, I get more.
So who made the motion?
I did.
Lynn made the
Lynn
motion,
did,
Robin
and Robin
seconded.
seconded.
If you want to accept that amendment, the second.
Yeah, as amended.
With, that's assuming that the motioner is good with all of the additional stuff that happened after the motion was done. Okay.
Thing.
We need to vote.
Well, further discussion. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Abstentions? That's unanimous. So that will go to public hearing also on December 7th. Next, what's the pleasure on the next one? The next one in my pile looks like density, but we could do something else. Density? Baseline
The
density?
board wants us
Density
to
bonuses?
print that out, I don't remember why.
We asked about density bonuses?
Was this related to density bonus? Is this something that we need to look at further before we discuss it?
I think so.
Because I haven't read this yet.
No, none of us have.
This was just, the board was talking about things for density, and Glenn said, oh, this town has something, and everybody said, oh, well, will you bring it to the next hearing? So we
Oh.
brought it for the board to look at.
So Glenn, you provided this.
Well, Glenn told me where it was, and I looked it up and got it.
Where it was.
Okay.
I didn't make these copies, I don't want to claim that I
Separate
did
them.
anything here that I didn't do. All I did was tell them that Newfields has a density bonus section.
This is from Newfields.
So we're looking specifically at 11.8.
Well, I'm thinking maybe we should do food trucks, since we've been over that a couple of times before, and get that out of the way.
Okay.
Yeah, and this is
Just
the
saying.
one that's not ready for prime time anymore. And, you know, it needs an awful lot of input as far as specifics.
All right, so it looks like we have a couple of attachments here for food trucks. One is,
The other one is this, what other towns, some of the other towns have done, and
so the single sheet is the proposal for us.
well, single sheet is the proposal for us, and there's two proposals. And one isn't really planning board, it's something we can recommend to the selectmen, the peddlers and hawkers. But the first one is whether we want to establish mobile food units, which is the cover-all, because a trailer, you can have a trailer as a food truck, and so the overall definition is mobile food unit. And whether we want to have in our ordinances, in our zones, specify that whether mobile food units would be allowed in that with a review, site plan review, planning board. So these would be not just parking a truck somewhere, in that zone. This would be the cases that we had come before us already, where somebody wants to put a truck on a commercial site, which requires a site plan amendment to change in use. And so they would have to come and this lists a few of the things they would have to go, but it would be basically a site plan review by the planning board to add that. So right now, we don't permit or prohibit food trucks, and so we ran into that problem before, telling people, well, we don't have the ordinance, and I prefer not to have somebody come back next year and say, yeah, oops, we forgot. And so I've put in possible zones, being the industrial and commercials, and it's indicated in parentheses which ones already have food service establishments as being a permitted use, which is C2 and 3. Industrial C1 are not permitted uses, and the historic district, I think that would be required by the historic district commission, the plains. I would throw that one over to them, so I don't think we need to change that one now. I just put that out there so that people can be thinking about which zones and whether they want to list food service units or mobile food units as permitted with site plan review. And, the first two we would need to add the definitions to our definition section in the preamble. So that when we put the term mobile food unit in an ordinance, we have a definition.
Well, couple of things. If somebody wants to bring a food truck in for a temporary basis for an event or something,
Yeah, that's a special
Now
event.
they have to go through site plan review
No,
to do
That
that.
would fall
That-
under
that would-
special event permit, right?
Right.
Yeah, that would all be under, that's in the hawkers and peddlers ordinance.
And
That's
then-
what I put in my notes too.
How strict do we want to get limiting the area where they can be? I mean, like Exeter, Clyde Cupcakes parks right next to the bandstand.
Yeah, Exeter does theirs based on their parking regulations. So, for example, I think they have a 30-minute parking regulation in most areas, and it's the default for anything, doesn't have a sign limit. So that's how they deal with it. But they have a lot more areas that people could park a food truck
Well, they have,
Sidewalks.
they
They have sidewalks.
have specified parking lots and sidewalks.
Sidewalks.
So they have a lot
So
more
the-
infrastructure.
And
Right.
this is proposing two separate options, right? So there's
Yeah,
the
one's for the permanent.
designated spaces within the town that we've identified that are fair game. And then the other is within an approved, like a commercial site that's allowing them to basically sublet space to do that, correct?
Yes, and,
Okay.
and there's a third issue, this kind of gray area, and that's the, for example, if Joe Schmo's Warehouse decides that they wanna have, because they don't have a kitchen there, they wanna have a food truck come in every day, or 3 food trucks come in every day to provide catering to their workers, you know, should there be, you know, who should be allowed, they should be allowed to do that. But food trucks should also get a permit from the town to operate in the town, because that's the only way we have making sure that we do, yeah,
What you basically, I think that's totally different. 'Cause
That is.
Yeah, because that'd be like a
That's a
private,
third.
that's not a public. So if they're gonna go onto that property to serve food to their employees, that's not a public thing, so I don't understand why they'd have to have a permit. That means if I had an event at my house and I wanted a food truck to come to my event, now that I have to have a permit to do that. And I don't think, I think a public thing with a permit should be required. A private thing, I don't think a permit should be required.
The truck would already have to be permitted by the state.
Correct, but the one into that warehouse that you're talking about would be a private thing.
The question is, do we have time limitations on that? Because otherwise, let's just keep, you know, a business from allowing the food truck to come in and set up there for 8 hours. And, you know, that's where the site plan review comes in, because do they have the parking? Do they have the septic?
Well, I think, again, it's a private use, that's a private use. Going to a business is a private use. That's not public, that's not parking on.
But all businesses are private. And so,
But
for
they do it for
example,
their employees.
regardless, you know, the American Legion, you know, if they would said, well, it's just for our Legion members, we'll park the food truck in there, you know, in there and,
Yeah, they're doing a public thing.
yeah, but,
So do we need to specify
but-
public
but-
versus private?
you know, how are you gonna manage that as far as who's coming on the site? I mean, obviously, that warehouse is gonna have, significant access control
I
systems.
think it should be just defined as private and public. Because then, like I said again, a private function at your residence, that truck is gonna have to have a permit to come to your house and have a private function.
I mean, when you look at car dealerships everywhere, they have food trucks that come in at lunchtime or midday.
Road coach.
The roach coach,
Yeah, yeah.
that comes in
The canteen
1 to
truck.
3 times a
Exactly.
day. The employees buy what they want and then the
Correct.
truck leaves.
Yeah, that's a
I
business.
mean, I don't think we
That's
need
gone
to,
on for
right,
eons.
I don't think that's something we need to regulate.
No,
I think
I would
that's a
call it
private use, and I
Exactly.
think that's something we don't need to regulate at all.
Yeah.
Right, okay.
Definitely there has to be a regulation on public use,
Yeah.
but private, I would say no.
Okay, so we're okay with that, you know, this sort of came up because I was trying to figure out how you can delineate between, you know, someplace, using the American Legion because they're the last ones to come up to us.
No, but I think down there, if I'm not mistaken, they were gonna put it in and have people coming off the road.
Yeah,
That's the public.
exactly.
That's the public.
Which would fall under the operated on a regular basis at a commercial site.
Correct.
Yes.
So,
Yeah.
yeah, I
Okay.
think that falls under that bucket.
Okay, so that, then we don't have to really worry about it.
And I think we're okay to approve it in HDC as long as they also get HDC approval.
Correct.
And that's what,
Well, I think-
that's why I have the question mark there, only by application to HTC question mark, do we want to even
What's HTC?
historic
Historic
district
District
commission?
Commission.
They control the
I think we should be
application.
reaching
It would
out to
just
the
be
HDC
Exactly.
to,
Yeah, before we approve it in the HDC, I think we.
Yeah, oh, yeah, I
HDC
think
is gonna be like,
HTC's got to say
Yeah.
whether, they have to decide that.
Yeah.
yes. Now,
Because certainly there's been hot dog stands around the center of town.
I can,
A lot of food
we have an
trucks.
HDC meeting, we have an HDC meeting that's coming a week from today. And depending on where we go with this tonight, I can bring that up to them.
Yeah.
I can introduce the subject and get some feedback from them.
Yeah, I think that would be good.
I guess that would be good. I'm just trying to beat this. That if you wanna put something down at the church for a day, for
private.
Like if they brought one in for the, well, not necessarily, because they brought one in for the
Hydroplane.
hydroplane races, that's what I was thinking. Then that's serving public. But it's a one, but that's an event thing.
What if we add this where it says permits are not required for operation at town-run special events which require a separate blah, blah, blah. Or for private time-limited events such as weddings, employee appreciation events, whatever. Would it fall in there?
Another right track.
Except then we do require a separate application.
And then
fee
you
for
get back and you have
insurance.
to really define private, because,
So that wouldn't work there.
I mean, my daughter's wedding, had Clyde's cupcakes coming,
Sure.
Hmm.
It was a lovely
set up
wedding.
2 hours or 3 hours, whatever it was, and then they were gone.
How many did you have?
But that's a
Cupcakes?
private event.
I think
That's a
just
private
I'm
the,
assuming you
Private, private event,
We do a
but
wedding.
what
can
if,
get one.
what if my private event lasted
I've
3
never
days?
done it.
Well, members of the public coming weren't invited, so
It's fine, it's
still
to your
private.
business,
It is
to serve
private.
the general public.
Okay.
And
It's
it's
private.
something that people were getting in addition to ice cream.
Right.
Just like if the church was having a function.
I mean,
It's not like they're doing it every single day and they're soliciting people to come off of Main Street to get something.
No, but what if it's at this strawberry fair?
Yeah.
Same thing, still private?
Special event.
That's what it is.
Yeah, special event.
so we need to differentiate between a special event and a private event.
Yep.
Right? Because one's gonna require an application fee, proof of insurance and all that, and then the other, we're just gonna say, it's a private event, it's not our.
And then there's a third one, that person that's gonna be setting up on a lot, is gonna do every day for 5 days a week and make money for the business.
Right.
Yeah,
That'd
that's
be a
the
third
other
one.
one. That's what we're saying.
Yeah,
I think that was, completely
correct.
different than this stuff.
But what we're talking about now is the hawkers and peddlers license, which is what most towns require, and it's really a question for the selectmen, since that's probably, it's not a planning ordinance, just what they require for a special event or something like that. So obviously Kingston Days, there's lots of food trucks. But everybody who has a food truck at Kingston Days has already given the committee got a permit, that's right, and you paid the money and showed your insurance and all that kind of stuff and signed the waiver, you name it. So, we've got to have something between that and, having a free-for-all where they don't have to demonstrate any liability coverage or anything else. So that's where the permit comes in. So you could cover it under special event permits, or if we can figure out where in town, not we mess up at the police department and, whoever, would be appropriate places to park a food truck that is not in the way and that people can park near safely.
Hey,
And I think that brings up a whole different discussion
Absolutely.
than what you're talking about with special event permits and private functions and
Right.
private businesses. I think that's a whole different thing.
If an ice cream truck pulled over flames, on a football day or something, and sat there for 3 hours, no one's gonna say a word. If a taco truck pulled up, people might be under this saying something.
Well, and I think part of it is that,
But what's the difference between ice cream and
That's my
chocolate?
point.
Well, actually, there is a class difference on the licensing by the state, but it's,
there is.
yeah, there is.
But
Yeah.
my concern on where we decide that these things may or may not be able to go, and I know my son's glaring at me at this point, but, is that I think we have to take into consideration those businesses that exist, that pay taxes, that, had to go through a site plan process to be able to sell food and do takeout and all that kind of stuff, and how that may or may not impact their business if we now allow a food truck to park across the street from them. I think we have to
Right.
take that kind of thing, we have to look at that a little differently than the things you all have just been talking about with the other things, which seem perfectly reasonable to me, that if you have a large facility someplace that doesn't have restaurants, they may say, we want 3 food trucks to come at lunch to service our own people who work there, and then they leave, and what do we care? But, I think we have to be cognizant of those businesses that had to go through the whole process and have a storefront and pay taxes, and how they may feel about what we're about to do. So I'm not saying not to do it, but just be aware that maybe
But
we don't let them.
We may address that with time restraints, like,
Yeah, that's,
Well, that's, I
one
think,
day.
I just think it has to be part of the discussion, that we can't just ignore the fact that,
yeah, and that's why you have to find designated areas that's not parking right in front of.
no, maybe it is the areas where we don't allow restaurants. You know, we have, according to this, there are
There are a couple
zones that serve
Um,
food service establishments
this
aren't
industrial
listed as
C1.
permitted use, like the industrial zone.
Industrial and C1 are both prohibited, not permitted.
But I'm just saying, you're not gonna impact a restaurant because they're not permitted in those zones anyway. I'm just,
Oh, I see what you're getting at. So
That's
put them
all.
in the, instead of
they-
putting it in the areas that are permitted, just put them in the areas that restaurants.
I don't know, for all I know, restaurants think they're wonderful and they bring more business, but I don't think we've had that discussion
Yeah.
with our business owners to find out how they would feel if all of a sudden HDC said, sure, you can park your trucks during lunchtime on the plains, and you might have restaurants in town going, why don't you just kill me now? So I'm just saying that we've had our restaurants have enough problems with COVID and everything else, that they're all trying to come back and be financially viable again. I don't want us to do anything, even by mistake, that now may impact their futures.
Right.
So I just want that to be part of the discussion.
Right.
we could take the easy way out and say food trucks permitted by special
Event.
events only.
Well, I mean, that would be a way to start it, and then we'd have time to then talk to our business owners to find out
Right.
what they do,
Yeah,
don't
that's good.
care.
And, you know, obviously,
Oh, God,
Boy, those are really short tapes tonight.
they're really not.
but I think one of the things he sent us out, quite a long time ago, some of the articles about food trucks and things to consider that talked about, you know, making sure that you weren't being protectionist, you know, favoring existing businesses over yet to be established businesses. However, so there certainly should be input, and it's got to be in a public hearing type of format where everybody has access. It can't be closed just to restaurant owners or something like that.
Oh, of course not.
Right, so it certainly would be good to inform them that we're having a hearing on those changes. I think in our goal to get a food truck ordinance established, especially one governing what zones we want them in and on commercial lots, similar to the two applications we had, so that we can have something that we can refer people to and say, here, you need a site plan review, and this is the process. And having the permit, you know, giving the selectmen giving themselves the ability to issue permits, and I don't know what department would probably do the code
Hawkers
enforcement.
and peddlers licenses are done through the police department.
Yeah, they are, and that's why I put a question mark in there, because, is that really the proper place, or should it be the health department, or should it be?
It used to be the town clerk.
Code enforcement officer, yeah. So,
But I don't know, based on how we've described, or I should say you've described very well, the bottom two scenarios, right? So you've got,
well, I think the second to last scenario about may operate on privately owned commercial sites is allowed by the owner. I think, as Peter pointed out, that we really don't want to be regulating that. You know, we don't want to park there with their
but that's
night.
as long as, if they're gonna do that and be open to the public, right? So that's different.
As long as there's sufficient parking places.
Privately owned commercial sites could be any commercial site in town.
Could be any site in town.
Oh, I see.
They're all
what you mean.
privately owned.
But my point in
Yeah.
saying these two seem separate to me, because hawkers and peddlers implies it's short term.
Yes,
This,
they come and go.
right, so I don't know that, And maybe that's what you were saying, and I just wasn't understanding.
Well,
Do we,
I basically said there's hawkers, peddlers, and mobile food unit.
but I think those are, we can't lump them together. It's hawkers and peddlers and, you know, short-term, time-limited. And then we've got this longer-term option.
Hawkers and peddlers, would they be like in multiple places?
Yep.
Hawkers and peddlers, like ice cream truck,
Exactly.
versus if this food truck is in the one
You're gonna
stationary
be
spot.
camped out on,
I believe
you know,
hawkers
this
and peddlers have
parcel.
to be mobile. They
Mobile.
can't find one place where they just park for
Correct.
a certain amount of time.
So what if, because, you know, we've been working on this off and on for about a year. What if we put the definitions in? Because the definitions are there, the definitions are good, it's a good place to start. So you put the definitions in, and then we talk about special permit, so that they can be able to function. And then we talk about if it's going to be at a regular basis at a commercial site, serving the public, that it has to come in for a site plan review. And just do that, and then hold a public hearing with, and invite the restaurants here in town and get their point of view.
I think if you don't, on the second part, Lynn,
Yeah.
if you don't establish what zones you're interested in them going in, then you've just, as you said before, allowed them to go any place in town.
Okay, so we can establish the zones as well.
I'm good with the special permit, I'm good with, however, Peter wants to, you know, think about that language where he talked about, I don't know if that's under special permit, you said you don't think someone should have a permit. If they just bring in food to their own employees kind of
Correct.
thing, or you're having an event at your own house and you wanna have it, so.
Right.
Could
I
we just
think-
list that as an exemption from all of this, right?
Or just, this is a permitted use.
Yeah.
And put that in. I agree with that, I think that's all reasonable. The rest of it, I think, gets a little, so I mean, I think those two things are great, and I don't think you're gonna have a lot of public thinking problems with any of those things. But the rest of it, I think you have to figure out the zones, and I don't know if you can figure out the zones with having further public involvement.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, I think that the commercial zones are fine, and, but this one says HDC only by application to HDC. I think it should be application to us and them. If it's a permanent.
Only if they apply to the HDC,
Okay.
and then they can go to us, but, with that permission, sorry.
But, I mean, I don't have a problem. I didn't have a problem putting them, leaving them sort of out of permitted or not permitted uses, because anything that's not permitted or not permitted has to go to the ZBA.
Now, it's kind of what I was hoping to avoid, was having to
Yeah.
send everybody who, you know, having a procedure where everybody has to go to the ZBA,
Yeah.
everybody with a food truck has to go to the ZBA.
They don't if they do, if it's a special event. They
No,
can-
I'm talking about the operations we've had before, where, you know, they want to permanently park, or not permanently, obviously.
No,
because they-
but they wanna be there every day.
Yeah, they want to be every day set up, for not business hours at a single commercial site. And that obviously is a change of use of that commercial site, and would require a site plan review.
Yeah, what is the argument against putting them in as a permitted use in those zones that allow food establishments with site plan review? Why isn't that just what we
Because
do?
they already allow it, you know, so that you could just add food trucks, I guess is the idea is that it's.
Well, I don't know that they are allowed, because that's what we said, was that we have no provisions for food trucks.
Right.
Right.
And I mean, I don't understand why, well, I just don't understand why that isn't what we do.
I don't understand why we want to.
Why?
I don't know that information yet, because I don't have any public input. Telling me whether they're in favor, not in favor, what the issue might be, what the issue might not be, and I would like to hear that before. I think this is a a significant enough change for other existing stick-built places that I would like to hear whether or not their argument is reasonable, not reasonable.
I'm
We
sure
don't,
at some-
we don't have
I'm
to
sure
allow
at some
them.
point, regular stick-built restaurants would have counseled planning boards to not allow fast food places.
And
Yeah, I guess I'm wondering about scope too, like, is it our,
we don't have to allow them, so why are we? Do we need food in town that we don't, that our residents have no place to get food that they need? I mean, well, I don't understand what the impetus is.
If our
to allow
residents
them.
don't want them, they simply wouldn't, then they wouldn't
yeah,
go
by
there.
virtue of not
They wouldn't go there.
patronizing them, they'll.
You think that the only people coming down Route 125 are from Kingston? I'm just saying,
I don't understand, when we look at other uses, we don't say, for instance, we didn't ask all of the other, warehousing places in town to give us their perspective on a 17-acre.
No, but all the other
Warehouse
warehouses in town are gonna be paying the same tax bill. That nobody else, they're not a mobile warehouse that isn't gonna have to pay the same taxes that our businesses have to pay.
No, but the businesses who are gonna host the
Exactly, they're
trucks
going to be
would
paying
pay
taxes.
They pay the taxes
and
already.
would pay for the amended site plan.
They paid the taxes already. There were no additional taxes being provided to the town because of the food truck. And I'm just saying that what is the impetus to allow this in any commercial zone? What is the benefit to the town? I'm just asking. I don't know what the benefit is.
Additional variety.
More
of
eating options for
food
for folks.
places.
I mean, I think that's the big,
That's it, the diversity and opportunity.
Brings in different foods.
I mean, I have,
They just aren't taking as big a risk, because if people walk with their, don't wanna go to them, they can back up and cancel their agreements with the landowner and,
I think that the patrons who are going to eat at a food truck weren't planning on going out to dinner.
I don't know if that's
I
true.
think they, yeah.
I used to work in Newburyport, and there was a Mexican truck that announced its site every day, and the same people showed up all the time, followed that truck around wherever it went. And
Isn't
was
there
like
one in
four. It was like
Do
two
you
or
think
three.
that those people
Yes, there
were
is.
not going to other restaurants?
He closed.
No, they just followed the trucks.
Well, that's what I'm saying. Like, if you're interested in food trucks, then you're gonna eat at a food truck. If you're interested in eating at the Carrottstown Plaza, you're gonna go to the Carrottstown Plaza. It's a different experience.
I guess we
on
don't-
that token, I guess I'd ask restaurants if they want us to allow a market basket. Because the new market baskets all have food service available in them. You can go in and buy pizzas and sushi and fried chicken, virtually anything that you can get at any restaurant in town, you can get at the market basket in Epic.
I'm pretty sure they pay taxes. I'm pretty sure they do.
The taxes on the property that these are located on are going to make that difference up.
They already pay taxes.
They may
You're
not pay taxes.
You're right. We don't have to ask the businesses.
I mean, I don't understand.
No,
I don't
no wonder
understand.
you two need a bigger office.
They want the stage.
But I do think that that's where the public hearing comes in.
That we would have to have for any of these proposals.
But you're right, we don't go out and when we do a site plan review, and if somebody wants to include, a restaurant, whatever, we don't, based on the business, as you point out, we don't say, oh.
We don't
bring
create a
in
special
$10,000
class of
other people.
bottom.
Yeah, if they're okay with that. Basically, it's, people will say you can do what you want with your own property, and as long as it follows the site plan regulations, which gets us back to, whether we want to put these in.
I mean, we're going to, if the thought is we're going to require a site plan review, then that's the public hearing.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's true.
on each and every one of them, yeah.
That's
So if we put all the definitions and everything in, it's written, then we should be covered.
And I think we need to designate
Well,
the certain zones that we would permit.
define the zones, and you probably also want to list it as a permitted use
Yeah.
in where those zones.
In whatever zone you
So I
allow
think,
them
I mean, my recommendation would be to include them in all commercial zones.
Commercial and industrial.
And
in. Are
depending
there
on
commercial zones where we don't presently, does C1 allow food establishments?
C1 does not list as a permitted food service establishment as a permitted use, nor does industrial. However, C2 and C3 do. So the question is whether we should just say industrial and C1, 2, and 3. It would be a permitted use, but requires site plan
Yeah.
approval.
A permitted use just for, mobile food unit or
No,
for
no.
food service,
Well,
period?
we would add, oh, I see what you're saying.
I think food service, period.
Well, and I guess to,
Why isn't it, is there any
To
reason why
Ellen's
it's not in there now?
Questions, why would
yeah, if this is gonna be fair game for everybody, then
Yeah, and it begs the question of why we don't allow them, for example. I can understand why we wouldn't list them as a permitted use in the industrial zone. We're trying to say, you know, sorry, this is, you know, rocks and blasting and
It
stuff.
isn't anymore though. Have you seen our industrial zone? You should put it in the industrial zone if you're gonna do it. We
Yeah.
allow hotels.
Yeah, I know.
we
It's,
have a hotel.
No, but we allow it in case there's ever a
Like
change
what?
in.
You
It
imagine.
could happen. They basically took what was there, listed everything that was already existing in that area that we designed.
So C2 allows for,
There was a little river.
establishments serving food and beverage such as, but not limited to restaurants, cafes, and taverns. We know it's in C3.
Now, why isn't it in C1?
I think because,
Because there's no reason.
because C1 you were looking for, you had thought, I think the thing behind C1 when it was initially developed was to have a place for small, independent contractors and things.
Isn't C1 down near Depot Road and
Yes.
Correct.
107 in the
Yes.
Scotland Road area?
Yeah.
Because
It's
if
in the bypass.
if we put it in there, I could see at some point, maybe the golf course saying we wanted to allow a food truck to be located there.
But the golf courses are for
Yeah.
residential. Golf courses in C.
Oh, it's on the other, you're right, it's on the other side of the road. You're
But
right.
even, that wouldn't be a bad place to allow one under the
No.
right conditions.
But you don't have to allow one because it's private, and if it's only for the people who are golfing, is that now a public use, or is that still?
That's
Well,
not
no,
necessarily
the golf
true.
course is
It's a
open.
public course, so anybody can come and go and.
So I think we should allow it in all three commercial zones, in industrial, and then depending on what HDC says, ask HDC what they want.
Yeah. We're not taking away anything from
I
anybody.
mean, I don't think the hot dog vendors that were out on the plains took much business away from restaurants and things, and I don't think they disrupted the HDC.
I
Well,
think
but there's-
they were given a cease and desist, weren't they?
Yeah, they
Because
weren't
they
permitted.
Yeah, they're not permitted.
But I'm just saying, I don't think when they were there over, they were at several locations, down by the daycare center, the Masonic Temple. I don't think they disrupted much. So I think that that's up to the HDC to decide, because that's all HDC area. It's not our purview.
Well, I don't think that HTC can give them permission to be on the plains.
Well,
No,
I don't, they
just-
weren't on the plains, but they were, I guess, adjacent to.
Yeah, because weren't they located on private property? Yeah.
One was at the Masonic Temple for a long time.
Conversation's making me hungry.
Yes.
Get a man a hot dog.
Did you eat all your dinner?
No.
I wasn't hungry at all until you mentioned Clyde's cupcakes. God, I love those.
Okay, so we've probably spent enough time on this item for tonight. Where are we and where are we going at this point?
I like what Lynn said a while ago, that we get it zonings. I think the definition's good that's been written.
So the definitions, of which there are two,
Two, just, it's the same definition, but it defines the food truck as a mobile food unit, so.
because, what about the purpose section?
I don't think there's a need for it.
No,
No.
because it's not
No,
gonna be
we're
a
just
zone.
adding,
Right.
adding a.
We're just sort of adding it as a use.
Mhm.
All right. So adding the two definitions, and then adding it as a permitted use in 3 commercial zones and
Industrial.
industrial.
And you can propose it to the HDC, ask them that.
And I'll be talking to HDC on Tuesday.
And we may wanna,
Well, what about though,
And I do think if it's gonna be permanent, that last one, it needs a site plan review.
well, that was my,
Yeah, I think that definitely has to be a provision.
For any,
For the bottom two, right? If it's gonna be a consistent thing that's, operational couple hours a day, as suggested here, and then somebody who's permanently sited somewhere.
Before we move on to something else, permitted use in 3 commercial zones and industrial zones with site plan?
with site plan review. It'd be listed as a permitted use. All those permitted uses require site plan.
Require site plan review.
Yeah.
Well, that's why I'm just asking where you guys
Yeah.
want this put.
Yeah, we just list them as a permitted use, and then if you're going to, the last paragraph talks about the site plan review, so that's the one that you do.
Okay, so all I have to do is put in permitted use, there's nothing else that, okay.
Correct.
Yeah, yes.
and I hate to say this, but we may wanna roll some kind of health permit into this so we can have a way to monitor the trucks.
Yeah.
Yep.
First of all, we need to see if they're state licensed.
Beyond their state
Well,
license.
that should be part of the site plan.
You wanna be
review.
checked.
Well, but what if they're gonna put one,
well, this says that they shall be licensed by the state of New Hampshire.
Yeah,
how are we gonna keep up with that?
Somebody has
What
to
I'm
come
saying
in.
is, let's just say that
Who's responsible, if it's licensed by the state, is the state responsible for monitoring it?
Mhm.
Yep.
Yes.
And
But
don't they?
but
There
they
are a
don't.
few
But they
towns that
don't.
have that have permission to do. Exeter has their own monitoring, and license
Is that
system.
sort of on top of, or does it
On top.
replace?
On top of the state license.
Exeter's health officer
Yeah.
monitors all the restaurants.
In
Let's-
addition to the state?
Let's say Magnuson Field has.
And as well as the hospital
What I'm wondering,
Cafeteria.
cafeteria,
Okay.
hospital food
And
service.
they're trying to get us to do that too.
so they're not doing it in place of the state, in other words, they're not giving a proxy by the state to do it?
They are.
No, I don't know.
This
They are.
Towns can do their own inspections, in fact, the state's encouraging it now.
State's
Because
encouraged
they don't
it
have
for 20
They
years.
wanna collect the fee and have the
Exactly.
town do it.
Well, and they probably don't have the staff to do it.
Right, so, but back to my point, let's just say there's an event going at Magnuson Field for 3 days and they wanna put food trucks there, 1 or 2.
It'd be a
Service,
special event, right?
special event, but how do we know that truck is licensed and has all
That
the
should
things
be-
where we
Wouldn't
require
that
a
be
permit?
vetted through
Your
the
special
special
permit
event
would
permitting
require it.
process?
But we require a permit through the special events that has to be authorized by different people, which I guess I can work with selectmen on that.
Yeah, that
I think the
seems like-
larger concern is if it's an approved use on a site plan and then
Yeah.
the certification or licensure or whatever lapses. or-
Right, they show us their license at our public hearing,
Correct.
and it's an annual one, and they don't get it the next December.
Then I think the health officer.
I do get notices, like when a restaurant's license starts to expire, I get a notice that says, like Kingston Pizza's license will expire January 1st. And then I'll get another notice and it's been renewed.
Couldn't there be something in either the site plan or through Richard that every year any food truck has to provide him with a current license, so he has an.
I think what we do is we write a separate thing for special events for food trucks.
Yeah, but even if it's not a
From
special
the
That would-
event,
that would be
From the
a select
selectmen.
meeting.
yeah.
The selectmen added to your special events.
I mean, we require for condo docs and stuff that they have to tell us yearly that everybody's 55 and over or whatever. Couldn't you just add in for food trucks that they have to provide a copy of their license to the town yearly?
Why don't we table this till next month after you talk to HDC and I'll talk to selectmen? And then we,
Or we can,
I think we
We
need to
can,
put the
we
language
can,
in
we
place.
can, we can put the language in place, have the public hearing with the others on the 7th, and any changes that we make would then go to a second hearing.
Correct.
Okay.
That way we keep on our,
Yeah, I think we need to get.
on our path,
in
because if we
place
put it
the way
off
we think
beyond
it should
that,
be.
we run the risk of not being able to get a
That's
second
fine.
hearing
That's
if
right.
we needed one.
That's right.
Actually, with your first one, I'm just saying you have,
I know.
okay, I just want to make sure you.
I'd rather not take that risk.
I'm with you on that, but you do have time.
Yes. What?
The Braves are
Braves.
ahead.
Oh. All right, so is there, is there a motion to that effect?
All I have at this point is that definitions is
So
written,
moved.
no need for purpose.
Second.
Permitted use in any commercial zone to industrial zone, they're all just listed as a permitted use.
That's it?
That's all I have.
That's all we're doing, I
Yeah,
think.
that's what
At
we
this-
should.
at this
put in
point.
place.
And Ray look forward, yeah, to know.
So you don't need to address any of the things you all talked about earlier?
I mean, what's the motion?
Special event permits and,
That's gonna be selected.
Well, that's a selectmen's.
The
Okay.
It's
motion
more
is,
like homework,
the
right?
motion is to put that wording
Right, in place.
in, that Ellen just stated,
Yeah.
to put that wording in place, which would include 2 definitions, and then adding it as a permitted use in 4 zones, and that's pretty much it for now.
For now.
Still so moved.
Bring that to public hearing, and then at that public hearing, we might want to make some tweaks to it, or we put it on the ballot, and in future years, this thing gets tweaked as time goes on.
It would be nice if we had a place that we could have.
thank you.
Yeah, something.
I'm just giving you a.
That's
So
really
that
popular.
was,
It's
Lynn made
really
the
popular.
motion.
No, Robin made the motion.
Really popular.
You made the motion.
Oh,
Who
it's
seconded?
incredibly
You
popular.
made it.
Yeah. Having an area set up where 10, 12 decades are.
Is there further discussion on the motion?
Nicely done.
Second.
That's done already. We're in further discussion.
All those in favor?
Steve, you're very late and $1 short. Aye. Further discussion. Richard?
No, I'm fine.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Abstention?
I'm playing
Unanimous.
code enforcement officer, so.
Oh my word. Well, that's appropriate, based on the discussion we've been having. All right, so we now have, we have density bonus, and tell me what this is again?
Oh, that was just the beginning, they still, Glenn and Richard is still working on it, but these were the changes that the board has already talked about making to the open space conservation subdivision. You've changed the name of it, you've changed some things, so this is just showing you where you stand at this point, but I think Richard and Glenn were gonna add some other things to it.
This is updating what we used to call our innovative, or what we currently call innovative zone.
Right.
And then we're
Okay.
changing it to
We
open
have
space
talked about
I don't
conservation.
know if we're ready.
Well, we've talked about changes to, I thought, the multifamily district.
Yeah.
Well, this was you changed the name to open space conservation subdivision, and then you also, a townhouse multifamily unit, you can now have up to 16 individual units. You can include amenities such as laundry facility, this is like 2. you
Yeah.
know,
Okay,
including community walkways, trails, these are the things you all had
Okay.
said at this point, but then,
we
you
were
guys.
supposed to check on numbers per
Yes,
acre.
yeah, you guys
Which we've-
weren't finished with it yet, but I just put this out there so you'd see where you currently were, and you guys talked about
Okay.
everything.
I can address that a little bit if you want to.
Well, the question, before you do that though, is it something we're gonna discuss tonight?
We can discuss some of it.
Okay.
We've got like
My
now.
proposal wasn't dealing with the innovative, with the open space.
This was stuff you all did 2 meetings ago and voted that these were the changes you wanted.
What Richard and I were gonna talk about was changing the multifamily district density requirements in C1.
Well, you were doing that too, but this one was that you guys were looking at the number of units or something you could have.
Which
Robin's-
would apply to
Yeah,
both.
we changed it from like 4 to 16, right?
And then you guys were still gonna double check as to
Well,
whether that
and
was the right
then
number.
what we
and-
said was we needed to come up with a total per acre.
Right.
and we both did some research, and the overall number that towns were putting out were 8 to 12 units per acre. And when we did the math to that, it just seemed extraordinary high. And we kind of came up with a number of 6 per acre. Now, what I was told by major developers that they use the 8 to 12, and if a clubhouse is involved or garages or anything to cover land, they drop to 8.
But that's bedrooms.
Yeah, bedrooms.
It's bedrooms.
Not units, bedrooms.
It's bedrooms. And well, I think 8 to 12 is crazy high.
It is. So that's why we dropped to 6 bedrooms.
We
per
dropped it to 6, which is still potentially high, except thinking about like the Amenta property, if their parcel is 35 acres in size and their developable acreage is 30 acres in size, and that might be high, they might have more than 5 acres of wetlands out there, but if they don't, you're looking at the 6, 180 bedrooms.
Which property are we talking about?
The Amenta one that is.
Depot.
On
Right.
Depot Road one?
Yeah.
There's a ton of wetlands out
Yeah,
there.
see,
Yeah.
so it could be, that would constrain this a lot.
Well, there's a couple of things that constrain it. If we went 6 bedrooms and then used the lot coverage formula on top of that, so if there were garages involved, if there were parking lots involved, if there were clubhouses involved, then that may drop that unit down even more.
Correct.
And that there are only 2 stories allowed.
2 stories, but they could be buildings that had 24 units in them. So it could be a big building,
Could they be 2 stories with a garage under?
If they could be, but I doubt if they could be there.
Didn't we raise the height?
Yes.
Yeah.
But it's still 2 stories. We raised it so it would support 2
2
stories.
stories, right?
Before it couldn't do that. So anyway, that's where we are.
Can you put that in? form?
I put it in the language for the multi-family section. I have not put it in the language
So we'll look at that. and bring it
innovative
back.
zone.
Okay, so you
So
guys,
should this one move forward to the next meeting?
Yes.
You can, well,
well,
Open space conservation.
sounds to me like there's gonna be some more different revised material brought to us.
yeah, yeah.
So we're not ready to move to public hearing at this point. I don't think we're set, we're not.
So that's an action item for Glenn and Richard to work on?
Yes. Because I think the workforce one now is done with it, we just need to look at open space.
And when will you bring that to the board at the next meeting to hand out?
They can have the text for the multifamily tonight,
Okay,
if you just take one and pass it on.
and we're gonna discuss that on the December meeting?
Correct. I have
Thank you. I only want to bring up that I hope we're done, because we have someone who wants to talk to the board, and we have to be done in 28 minutes.
There's a lot of,
one.
are these all the same, one, they're single sheets?
Yep,
Oh, we have to because it's a planning board.
exactly.
I
And now
thought,
you all have to,
I thought there was a curfew in town hall.
I would.
So,
You guys can amend it, but you have a thing where you say you're gonna be done by 10.
Correct.
Well, number 4 is wrong.
Yeah. You said it was gonna be 16?
Yes.
It's gonna be 16 and there's nothing that says it can't go, it can go over 100
Sure.
units if they've got the acreage.
And supports the subject.
Do we want to do that? Okay, I bet that's, the scale gets so intense.
You can't say 100 because it could be a 100-acre parcel. I mean, if somebody bought all those over there, there's 80 acres.
Between the 3 parcels.
How can we say
So
greater
you-
than 4 or 6?
No, it was gonna, that we had.
I think we need to talk about this.
and I think, I'm
Yeah.
kind of tapped out on all this stuff right now.
Me too. I agree.
Well, it's not,
Okay,
Let's second that.
Okay, so we'll move that to the next meeting.
All right. And what, we're not doing this density bonus thing
No.
right now, are we?
No.
Okay, well, we made a lot of progress. I mean, that was
Yeah,
good.
that's a lot.
That's a lot of stuff. And we've got a lot of stuff moving to public hearing on the 7th. Okay. Let's see, we've done minutes. I think we've done everything except for, speaking of this, is that correct? Okay. Mr. Dwarman, would you please come up to the table? And once you're seated, if you could clearly state your name and your address.
Yes.
Matthew Warren, 3 New Boston Road.
Okay, thank you. Richard, do you want to preface this at all before he starts, or? I want to get us to the point where we're into the discussion, because we're going to run out of time.
Okay. This property, which I think most of you know, is trying to go from a commercial business to residential. And it seems like every time we think we're done, we find one more step that needs to be done to do that. And the biggest hurdle that we've come to now are impact fees. And that's what he's here to talk to us about, and some options that may exist. And does he need to make the request, or do I for non-public?
Well, he technically, I think, should.
Okay.
So I guess before we get onto that topic, just real quick, when I was here last time, we discussed very briefly the process of putting together a warrant article to move the zoning, the rural residential line, over one lot to encompass my property as well. So I'd like to, I know that everybody kind of seemed on board with that. I think there was some precedence as well on other properties. So I'd like to, again, just request that the board author that article, please.
So you want the board to do that article?
Yes, please.
Just so I understand, that line that you're talking about,
Yeah.
is that the one between the abutter to the right in your building?
So number 5, New Boston Road, the junkyard, that's rural residential.
If you're looking at your building, you're talking left or right?
Left,
The left is rural residential.
a single family house.
What's the building on the right in the corner?
Single
That's-
family.
That's single family
So
residential.
single, yours, and then rural.
Correct, yeah.
And the board told him to be when he came in that he should put in the warrant. But he's asking that the board will put it in.
And we've done this several times in the past. We did it 2 years or 3 years ago on the one lot on 111 for the dog kennel. We moved the property line.
How long ago did they move that line? The one that his property? Because wasn't originally his property in that corner lot one property?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, that was separated.
Well, that's what I'm saying, so what I'm getting at is they split that,
Right.
but it was originally one property. So my question would be, couldn't you just go back the way it was? Just throwing it out there. As far as zoning wise,
Well, right now, the property to the right is single family.
okay?
The one to the left is rural residential.
Correct.
And he wants to go to the rural residential side, not to the single family side.
Okay,
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
He wants it less restrictive.
Yeah, because you're allowed to have an in-home business in rural residential.
And I haven't verified that where the lines are anything, that's just based on
And I think,
conversations with Glenn.
and I think, well, whether this gentleman does a proposal on his own or whether we do it, I mean, Ellen is right. I mean, him doing it was one of the options that we had given him the last time. And, you know, there are times when we move zoning lines, sometimes it's, you know, if we realize that, you know, at some point we, you know, clearly a mistake was made and, you know, we want to right that wrong. You in this case, it's the property owner who is wanting to do it for his personal benefit, and so I think there's justification for him to do it, but, the
It's a
board-
non-conforming use. The current use that's legally there is non-conforming
Right, and
to
you
the
got
single-family residential.
ZBA on the last two businesses, they had to go to the ZBA.
Just to add a little more information as well, the original site plan, the original tax map that was provided to me at the closing of the property was the 1976 tax map, and on that map it showed the line actually bisected my property, so half of my parking lot was rural residential and half was single family. And then I guess that was cleaned up and pushed over.
And that was probably done by the town, because clearly that was not a good situation, and
Right.
the town would want to clean that up and make it.
I
A lot of
So I
other
think that-
properties that have, yeah.
Considering that the building itself has only ever been used for what would be considered commercial use or non-residential use,
Well-
I think it makes sense for it to be.
If you want to go back to the history of the building, the church was built illegally. And it was built illegally by the church itself. The Catholic Church came down on them building that at the time. And then the septic system was put in illegally, and that's why that line was in the parking lot, was to put the septic on the property next door and allow the distance between. And then they reached an agreement to share the septic based on the fact that the church was gonna use very little water and everything else. And that's why, I called the state about the septic, because if he was gonna be a single-family residential now, did he have to put in his own septic? And they basically said, no, he can get by with what's there as long as they have shared septic, as long as they have a written agreement between them, saying what's gonna happen in the future, that if there's a failure, they both have to put in their own system. And I've talked to the person on the corner, and they're okay with that.
And when you go to sell the property, financing. When you go to sell the property to get financing, you're going to have that agreement for sure, or you won't get financing.
You have to have a legally drawn easement, right? Would that be what that's called, an easement?
Well, it's
a
yeah, some of it's
An
an
easement,
easement,
because he's using that
some of it's an
septic.
easement, some of it's,
Yeah.
a joint, it's just a shared
We got
septic
it.
and a shared well.
Yeah.
They've got their own well now.
Yeah, but I'm just saying, it's the same kind of agreement.
Well, there's also a building code now that says every single-family residence has to have its own septic. And that's why the state said if there's a failure, they have to put in their own system.
The discussion,
I ran this by Sumner, and he said we have to have several things. We have to have letters rescinding the ZBA approvals, that he doesn't want those anymore. We have to have a letter saying he's declaring it as residential. Impact fees have to be paid. All the wiring and permits have to be taken up and meet residential safety guidelines and everything. So there's quite a bit to do in this.
Okay, and Ellen had given me a heads up that at some point, I believe that you probably wanted this to be under non-public. Are we
not
at that?
this discussion,
No,
but
the
the
other-
reason he's actually coming in tonight.
Oh, okay, all right. So before we run out of time for this meeting, can the board make a decision on whether or not it wants to support and essentially sponsor an article to change the zone line?
I think there's a difference of whether we're gonna, as you say, once we get it, we may be in favor of it, but I don't understand why this would be a planning board article. Why wouldn't it be a
Yeah, I
petition
think
article?
if it was correcting a mistake, we could do it. But I think the correction was made by the town to not have the line going through the center of the property. I remember when that happened. That was the type of thing that the town would do. But because it got moved in for his purposes in the wrong direction, then it's something that he should do. We could provide some guidance on it.
It really didn't get moved in the wrong direction.
Oh, okay, sorry.
It's-
Well, no, I said for his purposes.
No,
No,
No, they just moved the single family line over, he's still in single family.
Yeah, but he wants to be rural residential.
I know, but that's on the other side.
Is the whole property? I thought it was half and half.
The whole property is.
Not anymore.
Not anymore.
No.
Okay.
Yeah, so that's what,
For this gentleman, for his personal use and benefit, would like it to be in a different zone.
so I think,
And I think
I think-
beyond my personal use and benefit, I'm planning to sell a property within the next 12 months. I'm
Okay.
planning on listing it commercially.
Well, that's fine, but the bottom line is that for now, your purpose is, I mean, it's for what you,
okay, so,
okay.
yeah, so to get back to it. I
I'm
think-
just trying to keep us moving along here, because he's
In
got
order for us to
something else.
increase response on things like that, I think it should come from you, then it comes to us, to vote on whether we
Support it,
support it or not, just
under a citizen petition.
recommend it, yes, as a citizen's petition. I think that's the proper,
And I agree with that, I think it needs to come from him, and I would support it as a board member, but I don't think we should write it, because after talking to Sumner, he thinks it's a big mistake to convert it. He thinks he should be selling it as is, as commercial property, which gets into.
Certainly,
But if it's going to be sold as a commercial property, which it is, then the entire process for everybody, including the town, would be easier if it were zoned rural residential, because under,
And that will be your argument to us.
well, it is.
And that's why I said I would support it.
With the dog kennel, did they author that themselves, or did this board author that?
We someone make a motion. He has something else he wants to talk about.
Yeah.
This isn't it, this one's not like.
We have 15 minutes left before we adjourn this meeting, at which point, if we're not done with him, he's gonna come back to see us at another meeting, and I don't think he wants to do that.
No?
I make a motion, we go into
No,
executive.
no, no.
we can't, we gotta dispose of
We
this.
need an answer on this question first,
Oh, okay,
before we do the non-public, I'm sorry.
I'm
So
sorry.
it's one motion.
Yes,
I make a motion that the applicant would be drawing up a warrant article
Under citizen's petition.
on the citizen's position per recommendation of our attorneys
Fix that down, and I'll second that.
for legal advice.
Okay. Motion by Lynn, second by Peter Coffin. Discussion. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Abstentions? Careful. All right, passes unanimously. And now you have another subject that you would like us to be in non-public for.
Yes, please.
Okay, Lynn.
And what is our reason for going into non-public?
Do you have the section that you
Glenn,
cite?
Glenn had it.
Or Glenn has it?
Yeah.
It's section 91A3,
Did you say C?
paragraph 2C.
2C.
And then what is the
And
general?
that reads, matters which, if discussed in public, would likely affect adversely the reputation of any person other than a member of the public body itself, unless such person requests an open meeting. This exemption shall extend to any application for assistance or tax abatement or waiver of a fee, fine, or other levy is based on inability to pay or poverty of the applicant.
So the waiver of the fee thing is probably where we,
I make a motion, we go into executive session per.
non-public.
Non-public session, sorry, per, RSA 93.
Well, what Glenn read.
Yeah, we're gonna go.
Thank you, Lynn.
You're welcome.
Who was the second?
Second.
Peter?
I'll second that, yeah. She got it.
I think you already did.
Oh, that's right.
Oh, I'm sorry, this was on the previous,
That was the previous.
that was the
one.
previous motion.
She won.
She won. Robin got it.
Robin wins the second.
Robin got it.
Right.
Motion by Lynn, second by Robin, and we have to do this by roll call. So, Steve, you have to say yes or no to go into non-public session.
Yes. Yes.
Yes.
I'm yes.
Yes.
Voting.
Yes.
All right. Adam, we're in non-public session, not quite.